How do I say your last name?
Pihs like the vegetable.
Pihs. Okay.
Yeah. That's it, man. That's a weird one, I know.
Welcome in, Greg.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
So I don't have like a set number of questions or anything. I just want to go like straight into your story. You have a real crazy story. Most people with your background end up serial killers and rapers, rapists. Like that. It's just the truth. And it's not like to downplay, but it's just like most people with really fucked up childhoods end up
fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you didn't.
Yeah. No. And I'm blessed. I'm blessed not to be. I mean, it was a journey to be where I am. And honestly, there was, I lived the first, 25, 26 years of my life with that victim mentality. And, definitely my life could have went a different direction at any time. And I'm glad to have taken on this self-development journey that I had and to be able to be where I am here today.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to start childhood. So you were like, when did things get crazy in your life? Like, let's start at age 5.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably a good age. And I think it's important to note that when I was 3 years old, my mother died of cancer. My biological mother died of cancer. And my stepmother, in some fashion, was a friend of my biological mother. My dad was a over-the-road truck driver. And so my stepmother pretty seamlessly shows up in the house as a caregiver. And I think it was, and I can't say for sure, I don't remember that vividly at 3 years old, but at some level, I think there was a ability for her to have a roof over her head was her gain, and my father had a caregiver for his children, and that was the win-win for them. And what started as my stepmother had a daughter of her own, and then I had 2 biological brothers, and later on in the later years, we ended up having 2 brothers with my father and my stepmother. 2 more got added in. So what started originally as disguised as discipline measures and things of that nature, I looping back when I came full circle with everything that happened, because people, always wonder like, what was her problem? What was her stepmother's problem with some of the things she did? And ultimately, it was really realizing that, because I broke it down myself, who does that? And that was really helpful in my process of forgiveness, realizing that she needed help and she didn't get the help that she needed. But what originally started as discipline, I don't know if she was just taking her anger out on us. I mean, there's no good reason for the things that we got abused for. And eventually they became, again, what started as, well, you did this wrong, so, you get a little extra love here. And
So was your dad around, or was he on the road?
So, no. And so my dad was on the road 90% of the time, which, I ran away roughly when I was 11 years old or so. My dad was on the road most of the time. Now, to the question of, did your dad have no clue what was going on? Clearly, he was turning a blind eye at some level. He was never fully disclosed to what was going on. The abuse wouldn't happen right in front of his face, and I wouldn't directly tell him. But whether you thought it was abuse or not, the situation wasn't right.
Yeah. So walk me through like a circumstance where this happened, like something you did and then the punishment for that.
Well, hopefully I'll do my best to paint a picture for you. I mean, I get where we're getting at there. It was never ending. It was never ending on an average day. And when we're talking about, sub 10 years old, I might get up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And every evening after dinner was served, I would sweep and I guess if you use the term mop any hard floors on my hands and knees. Every evening with a dustpan and dust broom and with a bucket and a mop every evening. And then in the mornings I would get up and clean the bathrooms and the kitchens, but they would be cleaned with she might throw cut a tall thing of Ajax, cut the top off and just throw it in the bathroom. And every day before school. And so beatings would happen before school because you didn't clean the bathroom right. You left some Ajax behind the toilet or on top of the door ledge. Like when it foofed up in the air, maybe some stayed on the door ledge.
So you were like a Marine at age 5.
I really tell people, and I don't want to take anything away from everyone, but to the best, it was like being a prisoner of war for 7 years. It was horrible. I had no friends. I had no social connection. At school, I was I'm really weird. And I literally did not, as a young adult, I did not know how to socialize with other humans. I didn't know you learn a lot of from 0 to 7, you learn a lot of things that you don't even realize are hardwired in that you then go on and use later. And so it was very awkward. Going to school, get home from school, and it would just immediately start again. She might ask a question, and whatever the question was, I did learn I believe that all of us through our darkest times is where we receive our gifts. And one of the gifts that I have received is the ability to be pretty raw with people. I mean, like pretty friggin' raw. But because I realized that, when I was young, if I'd lied or didn't lie, I was still getting beat. But if I lied, it was getting worse. So I was like, no matter what, we're just laying out the truth. We are laying it out the first time, like no matter how bad it is. So that is a gift that I now have today. But yeah, it was for no rhyme and reason. It was all day, every day.
And so tell me some of the craziest instances.
So yeah, there was a time when, this one I think would be definitely pretty crazy. So whenever she would beat me, it would be, sometimes it was objects. A lot of times she would pick me up by my throat and maybe throw me downstairs or something, but she would choke me until I would pass out. And that was very common. I would wake up in random places, sometimes bleeding maybe from my head. I have scars all over my head. I don't know what maybe it was just about power. Obviously, because of my size, she would literally be able to pick me up by my neck and choke me until I would fully be unconscious.
Did she ever murder anyone?
So, yeah, that's quite a bold question. So when I was 7 years old, she killed my 5-year-old brother, Timothy. And to this day, now I think it's important to note as far as no legal action has ever been taken. Let me say that because everyone always asks, how does that work? And I'll go into a little bit of detail on that. But I think it's very important to note that as far as morally and emotionally goes, I've fully forgiven her because, again, I understand that she needed help that she didn't get. In that event, in the shortest term, she picked up Timothy by his feet and she slammed him on the concrete and it severed his brainstem. And she told everyone that he fell off the pool deck. And I was there. when the people came. He got life flighted and everything right from the house. And I didn't say any different because I'm confident she would have killed me too.
Man. I can't even imagine. So this is your worldview. Like all you know is violence,
anger. Extreme perfectionism. And extreme. I would not be allowed to use anything of ease. I was not allowed to use. So like we had carpeted areas in the house and I would be responsible for doing what a vacuum would do, but I would have to bend over and pick everything up. And so when I would get done, she would go through and I don't care if she would, finger bang in a corner, whatever the case may be. She'd find another handful of dust and dirt, debris. I don't care if it was pebbles, and I'd have to eat it. And that was every friggin' time.
This is the most bizarre.
Yeah.
All right. So this happens, which you're on the verge of death at this point. Let's just, right?
Yeah.
So when do you realize that I'm going to die if I don't get out? And then what is your game plan to get out?
I contemplated retaliating when I was young, attacking her, but she was such a big monster visually in my mind because it started at 3 years old. So even I don't know that if I could have handled her at 10, but at 10, I still seen her from the 3-year-old mind. She was huge. She was massive. And I don't mean that by like today's standards. I just mean mentally in my mind, there was no actually, like when I would think about maybe I should retaliate, like in the middle of the night, like maybe I've literally, I thought about stabbing her in the night, just being fair. And I thought like, man, if I miss, like if it doesn't actually happen, like she's going to not only kill me, she's going to torture me for the act. When did I realize, when I was, again, the first time I finally ran away, I realized that I was going to have to run away. And I think in school or something, I read this book. It was called like, I don't know. It was about this kid that, I don't know if he ran away or if he was just like, but he was Catskill Mountains up in upstate New York, and he was like living up in the mountains and stuff. So I was like, boom, got it. I'm done.
Game plan.
I'm like, I read the book. I'm pretty much a mountaineer. So no, for real, I was like, all right, well, I was like, run away. I'm like, that's it. And so I did. And the first time I ran away, I mean, again, no social network, no understanding of how society works. And let me preface that when I say no understanding of how society works. I didn't even realize literally it's just, it was when people talk about doing things and not having a choice. A little bit. When people talk about doing things and not having a choice, sometimes people are in that position, but maybe don't realize how serious that statement could be. So there was definitely people during this time, we got to wonder, did anyone outside realize what was going on inside. Well, first of all, keep in mind, I was born in 1985, so this goes on between 1985 and 1995. First
in what city?
In New Jersey. I was Camden, New Jersey, which is the New Jersey of New Jersey. It's bad. And so people kind of had that attitude, like, you know, what goes on in someone else's house is their business. And of course you're allowed to, like, you need to rough up, you know, you need to discipline your kids. Like at that time, like, yeah, of course you discipline your kids. Maybe you got a little too excited on that one. Okay, we understand. But it wasn't like a reality. Even today, I cannot wait to create more awareness around child abuse, neglect, whatever it may be, because, you know, especially then and even now, it's just not really a real thing. You know, like, oh, that's the kid, he probably needed a little bit of discipline. Like, there's a lot more discipline going on. But so there's people that definitely going to school, maybe bloody nose, black eye, obviously stitches a lot. She would make up these stories. DIFAS was involved. It was the Division of Youth and Family Services. And I'll never forget to this day, the lady's name was Janet Foley. She was a caseworker, and she would actually have to visit our house once a week, because it was like that. There actually was, even though I said there wasn't an attention brought to it, there was a lot of people chirping in the background, but nobody making enough noise. So I still remember this day, Janet Foley would come to our house once a week, and my stepmom had everyone duped. I mean, the house was clean. Everything was buttoned up. They didn't know I was doing it, like, instead of sleeping. But they come in the house and they're like, yeah, everything seems up and up. And I mean, she had everyone duped. And so obviously I was a bit socially awkward. And then she would also do things to paint a picture of me and my brothers being out of control. So for an example, one time she sent me to school with a pocket knife in my backpack and had my older brother declare while I was at school that I had this item and that I was going to use it in this rage or something. And none of it existed. It was horrible. It was one of the worst feelings when I had to go to school that day, knowing that I was going to have to face this, and I didn't want nothing of it. Like, I didn't even want this knife in my possession. And in that manner,
she's a true psychopath.
Yeah.
There's got to be a Netflix documentary about her. You gotta. I think this is what's next.
Yeah. So I would go to counseling and stuff because people thought I was just out of control, because she had this picture painted like, no, he's out of control. You know, I'm not beating him. He's clumsy and he's out of control. And I'm doing my best. And look, everything's buttoned up. And so I would have to go to counseling. And so in the beginning, I would go to these counseling sessions and they would ask me these questions like, hey, what's going on? Why are you doing this? And in my mind, I'm like, well, you know, she's beating the shit out of me. But I knew not to say anything. So I would sit there. What I have to assume was probably like some of the most awkward times for these therapists. I would just sit there for an hour. And I mean, like, I would sit there like a steel trap. Like, we ain't moving, we ain't talking. Like, I'm not about to mess this up and get the shit beat out of me again. And so that doesn't last too long, because then they're like, well, he's not talking, what's going on? So she beat the shit out of me, and she was like, your next session, you talk and everything's good to go. So for a period of years, I would go see counselors once a week, and I would dupe the shit out of them that everything was good to go for an hour and walk away. And they'd be like, yeah, man, he's making progress. And it was like, dude, it was like, so it was torturous. It was torturous.
So why didn't you just tell them everything? Or did you think the second I tell her everything, she kills me? That, like,
so that's a great question. So first and foremost, my fear of her was, I don't know that I can quantify it with words. I mean, I literally watched her kill my brother. But with that being said, when I was to share this with you, when I was roughly 10, 11 years old, the first time I ran away, I only made it for a period of, I'm going to throw a week out there. I don't know if it was 2 weeks. It wasn't a long period of time. And a cop, you know, there's like runaway reports out and so on. So a cop finds me. I'm just like walking down the side of the road. And he's like, hey, what's your name? I was like, Tom Jones. He's like, no, you're Greg Pihs. Let's go. So he takes me to the police station, and I had this teacher, Miss Cunningham, and she would share with me. She would tell me, she'd be like, I know, obviously, like, I mean, just bluntly, she's like, I know that what's going on. She's like, this shit isn't right. She was like, you're going to have to say something, and it's not going to change until you say something. She's like, I can't do anything. She's like, I love you. I want to help you, but you have to say something. And so, and when I go to this police station at that time, when you're like, hey, why don't you say anything? I mustered up all the courage I owned as a human being, and I'm like, this is it. I'm putting it out there. And I'm in the police station. The cop, I'm in like an office, and the cop's across the desk, and he asked, he's like, why did you run away? And I mean, like, I was literally physically shaking to deliver this message. And I told him, I'm like, she's beating me. I'm like, my stepmom's abusing me. And he didn't really, he's like, okay. He probably asked maybe like, well, what do you mean? Or something like that, which It's a very hard question at the time. And we didn't have much conversation from there. And he gets up and he walks out of the room and he comes back in the room with my stepmother. And she sits down right next to me and he says, you're beating him. And she says, oh, he does this all the time for attention. Blah, 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 blah. Lays out her little pre-scripted rap sheet of all the crazy shit that I do that isn't real. And they sent me home with her that day. And when I got home, my stepmother beat the shit out of me, and she made it real clear, if you ever run away again, you better never come back. I ran away one more time. I didn't come back till I was 26 to forgive her.
So what age did you run away at?
Roughly speaking, 11 years old. I mean, it wasn't long after.
Oh, okay. So
I knew that, like, if I didn't run away, she was probably going to kill me. At this time, my older brother has already ran away, and he's already in placement. So I'm the last one left. My other two brothers and my sister, I call them all my brother and sister, but they're half, and my sister technically wouldn't be biologically rated at all. They don't get abused. Just when I say don't get abused, they don't get abused physically at all. Mentally, they're watching this, and obviously she's not very capable of being a sound mother. So
no.
So there's still things that they have to unpack in their life, but they don't receive physical abuse. And my brother had ran away already, and my older brother ran away. He's in state custody. My younger brother's dead. I'm the last one, and I'm like, she's going to kill me. So it didn't take long, and I ran away again. So that time I ran away, and I made sure, like, at first I was just like hiding in the woods because I knew nothing about. I didn't know how to successfully run away other than the book I read on Catskill Mountains. So I literally was hiding in the woods. There was a night, I vividly remember, probably like the first night I ran away, I assume, because I went out and acquired things from there. But like thinking, I really thought that there was a night, I got so cold, I thought I was going to freeze to death that night. This is in New Jersey. And I remember like just thinking to myself, like it wasn't, I remember just thinking, what else could I possibly do right now while I'm sitting there just like shivering uncontrollably? And I was like, man, there's nothing else I can do. I can't go somewhere for warmth because then I'll get sent back home. I don't have any additional layers. This is all I have. And I thought, I was like, man, I'll probably just die here. But but honestly, I was better off dying there than at my house. Go ahead.
See, I'm like trying to relate with that. And I'm like, well, at 23, I was in Finland and I didn't have a coat on me and I got locked out of my Airbnb. Like I flew first class to Finland and then you're like, my phone totally died. You know, like it's like I'm like trying to relate and it's like I really was cold, but like it's just not so okay. So you're 11 years old.
Yep.
About to freeze to death. And are you still going to school at this point?
So
I just have a lot of questions.
So oddly enough, I went to school for like 1 or 2 days after I'd first ran away. Like I just showed up the first day, and honestly, actually that night that I was that cold, I went to school that day, and it was literally, I didn't know if school had been notified that I ran away again yet. But I was like, I'm gonna gamble it because I can get some warmth. And I think I went to school for maybe a couple days. I don't know. It might have been 2 or 3 days. And then, sure enough, they figured out pretty quickly I was ran away. And so I literally, on foot however I figured out that day that the school had figured out, like maybe it might've been Miss Cunningham. Maybe one of the teachers told me, they were like, hey, stay right here. And I was like, I already know what's going on. So I literally like on foot ran out of the school and literally I ran into some woods and then I obviously couldn't go to school no more.
Yeah. So tell me next steps after that.
So as far as
in the woods.
Yeah. So as far as, feeding myself. So, I mean, it literally, like I had no plan. I had no clue what I'd do, but I just knew that I couldn't go back home. So as far as feeding myself and such, I mean, I would eat out of trash cans. I mean, I remember that, I thought it was, I thought it was like the coolest thing when I would go in a trash can and someone had a sandwich from like a fast food place that they ate like half of and then wrapped it up in that wrapper and threw it away. Dude, that was gold because not only obviously the rest of the trash is not as appealing, but when I was growing up, I would literally, I don't know what or why, I don't know what the thing was, but most days like I would literally eat food that was rotten before it would get thrown away. I mean, we're a little bit off subject on
Do you ever get sick? Like, is it possible to get COVID? I feel like your immune system's got to be so strong.
So I seldomly ever get sick. Seldomly ever. It's gotta be. I think about that sometimes. I'm like, it's gotta be pretty mean. I mean, while we're on it and we're talking about eating, I'm talking about like moldy, rotten food. Like, it was very, very common occurrence. And generally speaking, like, I almost never, like, I don't know how I didn't have like a food eating disorder, which for a while I used to like eat like, it used to, like, when I would eat, people would kind of like look like, what is he doing? It was like, I guess like a dog that got food. It was like, don't touch it. Like, I'm eating it.
Yeah.
And, if it wasn't rotten food, I don't know what the obsession, like, if I was eating regular food, it might be warmed up to temperatures past what you should be able to eat in terms of heat, or even frozen. And I don't know what the thing was with food, but I've also consumed dog shit, human urine. I've drank out of toilets. I've consumed more of my own vomit than I care to remember.
And that's because of your mom?
Because of my stepmom.
Yeah, let's be very clear, stepmom.
Yeah. So yeah, there was no. So not only, of course, there was like no qualms with going and digging the trash can, but
do you sometimes think that you're a little tougher than David Goggins? Does that ever come across your mind just a little bit?
No. That's funny. He's a tough guy. That's funny. I do think to myself, I've never compared myself with, well, even if I did, I mean, that guy's he's a savage. But I do think sometimes that, or all the times, like when I face challenges, I'm like, dude, there's nothing, whatever, let's go. Like, let's do it. But I ended up in like, I finally got, caught for maybe like, I don't know, maybe I was stealing food or something. And, I got caught and like with the police. And so they didn't send me home because of the behavior like that I got caught. So I was going to get like in trouble for that. And so at first I was in like, first they tried to put me in these like, a group home setting type, or not a group home, but like, I don't know if it was like a foster home, but it wasn't completely a detention center. But I was only there for short period of time. And eventually I found myself into a detention center, and there was a period of time that was supposed to be served. I don't remember exactly, but a period of time that was supposed to be served in the detention center for the misbehavior that I had did. And I remember as I got towards the end of that, we're like 12 years old, 13 years old. And as I got to the end of that, I remember asking like, where do I go next? Like, what do we do next? And they were like, you get to go home when you're done. And that, this was, man, like those, like there was a period of time there where like life was so cool. Like that was like the coolest, like being locked was like the coolest thing ever. Like, as far as I'm concerned, these people, my friends, they're not my friends, but as far as like, these people are not beating me. And so, no, it was like this, like.
They only hit me once a day.
Yeah. Right. I'm allowed to hit back. And so, it was very, like, I just was like living blissful. I'm like, man, this is so cool. And, when I found out that I would have to go back home, that was so, chilling. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, no, like I'm literally like, oh, like, are they not getting what's going on here? And so immediately, like, I don't care if they said go this way, I went that way. If there was any opportunity to fight, I would fight. I mean, heck, I'd set up fights just for him. Like, hey, look, you want to fight tomorrow? but I mean, just totally misbehaved, which at the time,
and are they in touch with your stepmom?
I don't know. I mean, no one's visiting me and such. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm happy.
Yeah.
And I'm
so how long did you, so you run away at 11, how long were you out before you were caught by the cops? Like a week?
Man, I'm not sure. I think maybe a little bit longer than that, but we're not talking about like years or nothing, or months on end or nothing like that.
So you get put in like a halfway house for kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Weird term. I don't know what else to say.
And I still, like, I don't know that I didn't have any intentions to be misbehaved, but again, I didn't know how to act in society. So people definitely looked at me like, what is he doing? Like, like literally eating. Like, eating was like a freak show. Like, people would look at me eat and be like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
And so, the detention centers, I didn't be in there till 17. And when I was 17, which actually there was a lady.
Was it different centers all the time?
So two centers. Was it two? I think it started in New Jersey, and somewhere along the lines, my dad, my stepmom moved to Virginia, and then I transferred to a place in Virginia. And then I'm there the rest of the time. I don't recall exactly on age, maybe 14 or 15. I'm not sure. And a lady eventually she asked me, one of the ladies that worked at the detention center. She said, "What are you gonna do when you turn 18?" And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't have to go home, right? She was like, no. She was like, but if you keep acting like this, she was like, they're gonna transfer you to prison. She was like, when you're an adult, like they can't just let you out acting the way you act. Because I really was just ruthless in behavior at this time, for sure. And so I was like, I don't know. Like I guess like prison sounds good. They got food. Like I can still defend myself. Sounds good. But so she's like, hey, don't you want to?
At this point, you're acting out just because that's who you are, or are you still acting out so you don't have to go back?
Making sure I'm not going back home. Okay. No, clearly making sure I'm not going back home. Like, I don't even want to be this, but I'm like, we are not going back home. Like, for sure. There's no way in hell. And so the lady, she says, do you want to try going to a group home maybe? And I didn't even know what a group home was. And she kind of explained it to me, and the doors weren't locked. So that sounded good. And she said, do this, put me on like a program, a behavior alteration program, whatever, track my behavior. And so I did what I needed to do. I mean, pretty promptly, because the group home sounded cool. And so sure enough, she gets me put in this group home. It's like, it literally was walking distance from the detention center. I literally took my stuff and walked like 2 blocks, and I showed up at this group home. And that's at 17 years old, and I'm going to a regular school like the first time in my life. I mean, maybe when I was really, really young, I don't even remember. But a regular high school, regular classes.
Yeah, how are you doing school up until then?
They would have some form of state-regulated teaching time inside this detention center. I mean, I was doing school of sorts. I mean, you weren't getting social interaction. It was more of completion of stuff. And to be honest, I think they were just, I don't know if anyone failed. I think it was more of checking the box, like, okay, you did 7th grade, good job, high five, keep going. So my senior year, I'm in a regular school, and I got a job at McDonald's, and like, dude, I was like, this is super awesome.
Did you eat all the food?
That's funny.
For your first time in life, you're like, not rotten food. I don't want it. I don't want it.
Nasty. I loved it, man.
You're like, I'll take out the trash.
That's funny. But yeah. I loved, I couldn't believe that, like, immediately when I first got paid, like when I got that first check, I was like, can I work more hours? I was like this money's, I can do whatever I want with this money, like from being childhood and being locked up. And I would work as much as they would humanly possibly allow me to work. I was like, if someone doesn't show up, you call me. Cause I was walking distance to that. And, I was loving it. I thought like, that was just the coolest thing. I was so excited and proud and honored to earn a real high school diploma. And like at the time I was like, no one's going to know that I didn't have all these other years. Like I got a diploma, man.
Yeah.
So I was really excited about it. And, while doing that, I actually first spoke with an Army recruiter about, joining the military. They did their little static display on, when they go collect the kids out of the school. So this Army recruiter is like, hey,
you want to jump out of buildings?
Yeah. And I was like the whole time, like he's trying to sell me on joining the Army, and I'm like just sitting there really confused, and I'm like, can you get me in? And I'm like, seriously? And he's like, oh, I can get you in. And I'm like, you get me in? I'm like, we're gold. Like you can stop the sales pitch.
And the food is free.
That's funny.
How many weekly beatings are there?
Yeah. So I went and spoke with the Army recruiter, went to the office, and he was like, yeah, I'll get you in. He got me some waivers for anything I needed. I was prescribed Ritalin for many years prior. And I never really took it. I was prescribed it like young. And I knew that the reason they were prescribing it were not even my actions. Like I knew that. And so I wouldn't even take it. And so most of the time when I was locked up, it was really cool. I figured out how to not really swallow it and hide it. And then I would use it and trade it because people loved Ritalin. But so I had to get a waiver for that and such. And so the Army recruiter, he's like, yeah, I'll get it taken care of. He got all the waivers and he, gets a date set up.
Now, did he know your story at all?
I mean, he knows that I was, in detention center and group home, but in detail, no. I only really started sharing my story within maybe the last 2 years.
Because for me, it's like, if he knew your story, you're going to be a SEAL, right? Like, he's like, oh, this guy passed out every day as a kid. Like, he'll totally be fine in water test.
Yeah. No, I don't think he knew. No, he definitely didn't know the depths of it. And there was a lady, I was excited.
Yeah, tell me how you entered, I guess, Marine. So, like,
yeah.
Did you enter as a Marine or did you enter as like...
So I ended up entering the service as a Marine, not as Army. That's kind of a unique story. One of the ladies at the group home, she says, hey, I was ecstatic that I'm about to go in the Army. I'm like, this is the coolest shit ever. And she's like, hey, don't you want to...
This gun shoots real bullets.
Like, seriously, I was just too ecstatic about this. And so a lady that worked at the group home, she says, hey, don't you think you want to explore your options? And I'm thinking, like, are you crazy, lady? Like, we got a bird in the hand. I don't want to look at nothing else right now. Yeah. But so she called the other recruiters and tells them, like, hey, this kid, blah, 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 you want to check him out. And she did that to say behind my back. And so I was ready to leave for MEPS with the Army recruiter. And that's where you go and do your physical and swear in and all that manner. And I was actually sitting on the steps of the out front of the group home, and the Army recruiter was going to come pick me up. And lo and behold, this Marine recruiter shows up. And so he had got word from when she called. And so he hops out and he's like, hey, big dog. He's like, don't you want to be a Marine or, whatever, something like that. I'm like thinking like, man, the Marines are cool as fuck. He's like, yeah. He's like, you don't want to go to the Army. He's like,
I get the outfit from day one.
He's like, get in the car. So I'm thinking, even though he's like talking about this Marine stuff, I'm thinking that all the, like, it's government. I'm thinking like he's the one that's taking me to MEPS. The Army guy couldn't take me is what I'm thinking. But he brings me to his office and he starts pitching me on the Marine Corps as an option. And he was a machine gunner. What he
doesn't realize is that all you need is a pin.
Dude, he was a machine gunner. So he's like he's like pitching me. And the whole time he's pitching me, I'm sitting there just trying to hide my chub. I'm just ecstatic. He's like, don't you want to join? And I'm like sitting there like, this is the coolest thing ever. And literally, like, I had to stop him. I'm like, dude, like, I will do this. Like, if we can do it, like, I'll do it. And I tell him like everything from the Army recruiter, what's going on. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. I'll get it all taken care of. He goes, like, their offices are right next to each other. So he goes, and I'm sure he was excited to tell the Army recruiter that he stole his lead or his recruit. And that's it. He got me. He got all everyone. Well, actually, when I first went up to MEPS, this is kind of funny. When I first went up there to sign in, they do this thing called the moment of truth. And so first, the recruiter didn't get me a waiver for Ritalin, the Marine recruiter. He's like, you don't need it. He's like, it doesn't matter, whatever. So I go up there and I do my physical and everything's good to go. And then they put you in this room and he tells me about this. He's like, they're going to tell you all this stuff and they're going to try to scare you. He's like, just keep moving, And so they put us in this room, all of us recruiters, and they do this like scare tactic they call the moment of truth. And they're like, I know your recruiter told you this and this and this, but we know 8 of you are lying on your application and you're going to prison and your recruiter's not going to be there. And I was like, me. I was like, I don't want to lose my freedom. So I'm like, I'm lying. My recruiter, dude, he was awesome. We didn't really speak much on the way home. I cried. I physically cried tears because I was like, my whole, like, that was it. Like, I didn't know what I would do. Like, what was I going to do when I was 18? Like, they had to let me go when I turned 18. I'm still 17 at the time. They had to let me go when I turned 18. And so, like, I was literally crying. And the recruiter didn't say, I mean, I don't remember him saying 2 words to me on the way back. I'm sure he was just utterly pissed because I went against everything he warned me about. But lo and behold, he gets me the waiver. We go back up to MEPS. I swear in at 17. And from there, as soon as I leave high school, as soon as high school wraps up, I ship right out to Marine Corps boot camp in Parris Island.
Yeah, so take me through all of that. You're there for how long? What's your first deployment?
Yeah.
What do you do on your first deployment? So, like Marines is like once a Marine, always a Marine, right?
Yep.
So I have a friend, he was like, a software engineer, like something real, like not hard in the Marines. And so I'm like, you were a Marine is the joke I always make with them, but like you definitely are, Yeah.
So I joined as 0311 or infantryman. I thought that was just the coolest thing in the world. And so boot camp, a funny story for boot camp while we're at it. Boot camp is 3 months long for Marines, and so I was in boot camp for close to 6 months. Just wanted to overachieve a little bit, do it twice. So roughly, I actually, when you do the rifle range, you qualify on the rifle range. Oddly, so after the rifle range, I still had a projectile round, a .223 round, a full live round from the rifle range, which when you leave the rifle, like you get patted down and everything because obviously they don't want recruits to have live ammunition outside of controlled environment. And so this thing was like at the bottom of my cargo pocket, and it like accidentally makes it through. And like a day or two later, when we're getting ready for like laundry call, this thing like falls out. I'm freaking out. I throw it, I like hide it somewhere, and a couple of days go by, and I'm like, I gotta get rid of this thing. And by the way, I think this thing is like the coolest thing in the world, by the way. Like, I haven't played with guns as a kid.
Tip?
It's green tip. I haven't played with guns as a kid, and like I'm just like ecstatic that they're letting me shoot live ammo and weapons. And so I mailed it home to a friend with like a letter, like, check this out, someone that I went to high school with. Don't do that. It doesn't work. So,
okay, why does this envelope have a bulge in it?
Yeah. That's how my mind was processing at that time. So they, lo and behold, they find out, and like I wanted to like die when they're like, who is Recruit Pihs? I'm like, who is that guy?
Anybody know where he is?
Yeah. Who wants to trade blouses with me? So I'm
just real patriotic. I'm not covering anything.
So they discussed NJP and me and kicking me out right there, and I was like, oh my God. So like I'm like pleading with them like no, and at whatever level they made a decision, they were like, well, they pretty much sent me back to day one to do boot camp again. That was the option of not being kicked out.
So
and I'm
free
like,
food again?
Yeah, right. I'm like done. Let's do it. So I went through boot camp a second time, and honestly, like mentally, it was so much easier. It was because you do the gas chamber in boot camp, and the first time you go through, you're like, I don't like, they're gonna kill me in there. Who knows? And then the second time you go through, I'm like, hey guys, relax. We're gonna live. We make it to tomorrow. So as wrap up boot camp, and then right after I go to what they call the School of Infantry, where they kind of teach you basic handling of the weapon systems that you'll use in North Carolina. And while I was there, this is in 2003, and the war in Iraq hadn't quite kicked off yet, not officially. A lot of talk about it, a lot of chatter, but not officially have we entered the country yet. I'm sure we're staged in Kuwait and such. And while I'm going through School of Infantry, the instructors would constantly love to tell us, like, you better pay attention, you better listen, you're going to, in 2 months, you're going to find yourself in Iraq, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I used to tell, like, I was like so confused. Like I was so confused by that. I would tell my buddy, I'm like, man, I wish you would shut the fuck up. Like, we're not even gonna get that lucky. Like, I'm serious. I really thought that would be the coolest shit in the world. And I wouldn't even get that lucky to do that. And would he stop friggin' dangling the carrot? I'm serious. And lo and behold, at the end of SOI, so School of Infantry is like maybe another 3 months. I don't know if I'm misspeaking. I don't remember exactly. And at the end of it, sure enough, I had orders to 2-7 in California, and they're one of the earlier units that are going to go to Iraq. And from the time I left the School of Infantry, now I've only been out of high school for like 7-8 months, whatever the math is. And from there, I go out to California. I'm out in California for like 10 days, and then I'm in Iraq. And I was ecstatic. I thought it was just, I couldn't believe it.
So I was born in 94. So when I asked some questions, understand how young I was during these events, when did Were you there when they tore down the statue of the dude over
Saddam?
Yeah.
I definitely wasn't physically present, in the proximity of it happening for sure. I'm not sure if I was in country when that happened or not. I'm not sure.
Okay. And then what are some of the things that happened while you were there? What was the country like when you arrived?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of, dispute about this.
So when let me tell you about it. So I am just like amped up and ecstatic that I'm going to get to go to war. And at the time, by the way, on my first deployment, I hadn't processed it yet, but by the time I go into my second deployment and further from there, I processed that I would die in Iraq. Like that became a goal. But the first time it wasn't a goal, but it was totally comfortable with it. Like this is like the coolest shit in the world. And so I get over there, and first we were like staged in Kuwait for, I don't know, like 30 days or something. And we finally cross and we get into Iraq. And we were at a base called Al-Assad, and we go out and do out our first mission. And I'm like ready for this like Vietnam scene. And we get out there, and we're in these this is early in the war. So at the time we're riding around in like literally, a lot of people probably don't remember this. We're riding around in vinyl like high back Humvees with like the zipper windows, because like very quickly the war adapted because we realized that they were bombing the shit out of us. So we had the armor stuff. The armor Humvees, they weren't in the beginning of the war. We were driving around with vinyl doors and zip up windows.
Do Humvees suck?
Dude, they're awesome.
So
they sucked it right
3
in
times, and everybody always tells me it's the worst decision ever. I just think because like an H1 Humvee is like 120 grand.
Yeah,
like a Hummer H1 is 120 grand, but a Humvee is like 20.
Yeah, it's probably been well used. But so we get out on this first mission, and there's kids out in the street, and they're like, "Good America, hello America, we love you." And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, do we shoot them? I'm like, I was like, what the hell? Seriously. And so for the first, I think I got over there in February, and the first time I got contact was, I think it was Easter, but it was early April. So whenever we get over there in February, all of March goes down, and I mean like nothing. No, like these people are like greeting us and happy that we're there. And I am like totally like, I don't even know how to process this mentally. and I'm going back and I'm thinking to these instructors like, you're going to be in Iraq, you're going to be at war, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, see, bitch, I told you I wouldn't get that fucking lucky. So we went and we get orders or word.
Do you have any, I'm gonna pause a little, did you have any friends?
So like,
because like you grew up like, homeless, halfway house, joined right at 18. Do you have anybody you write letters to? Do you have anybody like how many friends do you have?
When I went to Iraq, no, pretty much no.
So did you didn't like obviously you didn't miss family. Did you miss friends? Like what did you do at night?
I would, I started, eventually I started working out in Iraq, but I do remember my first and second deployment being very, I would never tell anyone, but when people would get their packages or their mail or their letters, and like they were just so excited because I was at Touch of Home, and I was excited when mail came because everyone else was excited. And then every time, like I would like ecstatic, like, and I would show up like I was getting this piece of mail. Like I knew I was not getting no mail. Like I knew, but I would show up because everyone's like, I'm excited too. And they'd hand all the mail out and the last piece would go out. And I would always just be like, so it was heavy not having mail. I wouldn't say anything to anyone, and every time I'd go, like maybe someone random's writing me a letter. So, but, so we the first time we got in contact,
every time you're like, probably got lost.
I'm sure it's on the way.
Got lost again. My last name's hard to spell. I don't
My dad said he's sending something. I'm sure it's coming. So we got told that we're going to relieve this unit in a city called Rawa, and that they had a mission that they had to go to, but it was we get word that it's like a very hot area, a lot of contact, and we're gonna go relieve them like like at nighttime, clandestine, like I'll come in and touch your shoulder, you'll leave, and I'll take your position. And so I'm like, ooh, here we go. So we get there, and it's in the middle of the night, and we get up, and I'm doing my relief with my guy. And I'm like, hey, do you guys get any contact out here? And he's like, dude, every day. He's like, every day. He's like, they fucking try to probe the wire, rockets, sniper. He's like, all day, every day. And I'm just, dude, I am ecstatic at this time. Like, there's buddies of mine that are like literally like, what the, like, dude, we don't want, like, we don't want that. I'm ecstatic. So we get in that night, and so we go through that night. Nothing happens. The next morning, and then all through the next day, the whole entire day, and nothing happens. And I'm like, is this like bullshit or what? And as it got into the evening, as it got into dusk, I started hearing right across, there was the Euphrates River, right across the river. I started hearing these like boom, 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 boom. And like these like thumping sounds, like it sounds off in the distance, but it sounds like an explosion. And so I said to my buddy Van, I was like, damn, somebody's getting some. And it wasn't but a couple of seconds later, I then learned what the sound of outgoing mortars sounded like. That was outgoing. And sure enough, these things just start coming in. I mean, they're hitting like danger close, like sand, debris, rock is like just everywhere. I mean, these things are dropping. And that's probably the highest my adrenaline has ever been in my life, actually, even higher than as a kid probably. And I thought in my mind, again, I'm thinking like this Vietnam scene. I'm like, here it is. We're getting overran right now. I'm like, fuck it, let's do it. But they only mortared us that day. But after that day, the very next day, we do get into a firefight, and then we do get some sniper fire. So from there, it kind of it does kick off from there.
All right, so take me through sniper fire. What are these people shooting? Because like I just picture a bunch of dudes like in robes with AKs. That's what I picture when somebody's like, "We're with Iraq."
Yeah, I think the biggest weapon of choice was the Dragunov, I think, which is a Russian sniper rifle. I don't know too much about them, but I think that was the biggest, probably the widest used enemy sniper rifle against us. But I don't know too much about
how many people were you fighting? Like this is, so my grandfather, World War II veteran, and conservative, and he's like, it's not pretty, and people don't like to talk about it, but like if you're at war, the goal is to win the war.
Yeah.
And he's like, so to win the war, you bomb the shit out of them. Like that's that was his outlook, and he'd be 98 now, he's in heaven. But, that was his outlook. Like, the reason he didn't like the war in Iraq is because he was like, they're not trying to win it.
Yeah.
He was like, that was his thing. He's like, if they were trying to win it, the country wouldn't exist. We just destroy the country.
Yeah, yeah.
And so how many people were you fight? Like, how many troops were there of your guys? How many troops of their guys were there? Do they have troops? Like,
yeah.
Because every time you just see Bin Laden, like, in a cave. And
that's That's it's kind of hard to say. So in Iraq, most of what you fought, or what I fought, was very it was very unorganized. The very beginning of the war, my first deployment, and so from my first to my second to my third deployment, each time I came back, the war had evolved crazy. And
were you fighting with drones by the third deployment?
UAVs were used. I did not personally. I wasn't in proximity of them being used, and I didn't personally use them. But they were being used. By the time my third deployment, which was in 2006 and 2007, the Iraqi people were allowed to. We were restanding up a government for them, and they were voting. We were securing voting sites so they could actually vote. And they were allowed to have weapons again. So now in 2006, 2007, in 2003, if it moves, shoot it. In 2006, 2007, wait and see if he wants to shoot you before you shoot him, which was crazy. That was hard to digest when they're like, well, they can have guns. Like, what?
They have freedoms now? What the hell?
That's funny. Yeah. But that's a big thing too.
Do they have a freedom of speech?
I'm not sure. I mean, but that is a big thing about the war that, I was excited to do it then because of, I guess because of my upbringing. I was extremely emotionally numb to trauma, like extreme, like no big deal.
Really? Who would have thought? With your background, I was really thinking.
And then, but yeah. I'm not even sure where it was at there, but it was a strong evolution each deployment. And that's kind of where I was going. Looking back on it, I have a friend now here in America that actually works in the same brokerage that I do, and he was a young teenager in Baghdad. He lived over there, and he now lives in America. And it was quite interesting listening to it from his perspective. You see, at the end of the day, just like I say about my stepmom, I mean, I believe that, I read it in Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like, we are no different than anyone else under other circumstances. So, like, you wouldn't eat out of a trash can, but if you're absolutely homeless, the situation might change. And in that manner, when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, I didn't care about the Iraqi people, just to be 100% raw and honest. But as an adult looking back, they were doing the same thing we were doing. I mean, they were fighting for their beliefs no different than we're fighting for ours.
Yeah, so were you fighting radical terrorists, or were you fighting just like people that didn't want their country destroyed?
So, yeah, I think, that's a good question. And so from the best of what I can tell, in the beginning of 2003, there was a little bit of organized militant until Saddam was taken out, which we took him out pretty quickly. After he was taken out, then you had, which I think is important to note that I'm not the historian to speak on this, but you had these other neighboring countries, Syria and so forth, that had powerful people that were essentially funding militias to come into Iraq just for an opportunity to take a stab at America. And or if they could have gained enough foothold, that would have gave them some new territory as well. But these people were just random militias funded for their own agendas. Is what it seemed to be.
Wow. Okay. So you weren't fighting like troops very often then?
No, most of the time. So as far as firefights go, and I don't know to tell you an exact number, but I've probably been in maybe a little bit more than a handful of firefights. So maybe more than 5, but less than 10 direct firefights in 3 combat tours. And a lot of times you're dealing with either sniper fire or IEDs. They are not equipped to stand toe-to-toe with us. So they just wouldn't. They're very, very dirty. And so most of what you were doing was, I mean, there was on my, I think it was my
what do you do every day?
So my first 2 deployments, I was deployed with infantry unit. And so essentially you may be a presence of force. So you're constantly patrolling. And when my first deployment as infantry, you're constantly foot patrolling, and those foot patrols, you might be just walking around a city, just being a presence of force. So, a enemy force cannot take a hold of what we have already established. Or you may be going out doing observation, or you may be sent out, directly to, either, detain or take out a high value target, occasionally. I say occasionally. They do send us in the 0311 infantry when needed. But we're like the messy kids. Like we're loud. We kick in the door. We shoot. We use too much. So obviously it's more appropriate when possible to send in like recon or snipers or something like that.
So break down like what is Army doing, what is Marines doing, what are SEALs doing.
Man, honestly, I don't think I'm the one to even answer that. I'm not sure.
I mean, were you all working together, or were you just your own unit of people doing your own thing? Y'all didn't talk to the other people.
Yeah, so you'd have your AO or your area of operation, and so you would definitely at some level need to be linked in with whatever other coalition forces are operating inside that area of operation, so that you know where they're at, so you're not having friendly fire, things of that nature. But at my level, at the small unit leader level, no, we're not operating with them. We're operating, generally speaking, most times as a squad, so about 13 people. And a platoon has 3 squads, so maybe a little under 50 people in a platoon. That platoon will go everywhere and do everything together, and then the 3 squads, wherever you're at as that platoon, one of you is probably watching a post where one of you is watching the people that are sleeping, and one of you is patrolling, and then those 3 are rotating. So you're going to do maybe 6 hours where you're watching someone's back while they're sleeping, 6 hours while you're out patrolling, and then maybe 6 hours while you're sleeping, and keep it rolling.
Every day.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell me about your childhood. Is it like you're not a crazy person? People with your childhood typically are. As I started this podcast, and I think that's what makes this so interesting to me. So, are you doing any work on yourself during this time?
No, during while I'm going to Iraq, no work at all. There was I was making, I mean, for my capacity, I was making plenty of money. I would maybe make anywhere from maybe $15,000 or even up to $20,000 when I would come back from a deployment. And that money, you weren't able to spend it while you're over there, so it's pretty much just sitting in the account. I re-enlist it while I was
How much a deployment?
Maybe depending on your rank, as you know, each deployment would become more, but maybe upwards of $15,000 or $20,000 while you come back, which to me was ungodly rich.
You get paid while you're home too, right?
Yes. Your pay was greater while you're over there because you're getting hazard duty pay, imminent danger pay, overseas pay, tax-free pay. So you're making several $100 more per month, and then the fact of the matter is you have nowhere to spend it.
Yeah.
So it's just cooking off for you, and you come back and then you do.
Yeah. Are there like restaurants there that y'all would eat at? Like, did y'all ever go out in the town and like get a candy bar? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. So there is as infantry there's a big base called Camp Fallujah. And on my 3rd deployment, I was stationed out of that base, and I lived in what they called these cans, and they were like metal, like Connex boxes, and like they had AC units, and like I took hot showers, and there was a chow hall in there. So my 3rd deployment, like that was incredible. My 1st deployment, we were literally like whatever was on your back was what you were carrying, and if you didn't have enough food, you were bartering with your buddy. I mean, we definitely ate in people's houses the food that they had. In Iraq, they're mostly eating like grains and things that they can grow, especially near the Euphrates. Bread is huge. There's not much, some vegetables, not much meat is eaten. If they do have, like if a cow would be used, they'll keep that thing as live as long as they can for the milk because, you're only going to get the meat once. And then in some of the villages, some of the marketplaces, we would absolutely get food, stop and get food there. They would make like kebab. Now, the most unsanitary stuff you ever seen, which I was well prepared for. So, but yeah, I know it's funny because like their food was good. And I don't know if it was good because it was really good or it was good because we hadn't eaten nothing worthwhile. But every time you ate it, like it was pretty inevitable you were going to have like some explosive diarrhea. And every time you'd swear that you would never do that again, but like a month later, you're like, all right, let's do it.
You're like, well, it's 12. It's 12 a.m.
Nothing else is open. So, but I've eaten goat over there that we've killed and cooked, goat and lamb, duck, chickens, turkey. I had 2 turkeys one time. I don't know where the turkeys. I mean, I don't know where they came from. I mean, they were in this backyard of this guy's house, and we're trying to. There's a language barrier, and we're trying to ask him like where these turkeys came from, and then we offered him some American money, and he was like, "Take them," because they loved American money. I don't really know why. Maybe a souvenir.
Because their currency isn't shit.
Because $1 was 10,000. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Hey, let me.
Because he retired off those turkeys.
Let me inform you on how currency works. Before the past year, the U.S. dollar is very valuable.
That's funny.
Yeah, do y'all take Bitcoin?
That's great.
It's so in China, in Shanghai or Shenzhen or like some of the bigger cities, then, things are more expensive, obviously. So things are more, but it's like, $1 is like 8,000 yen or, like it's something crazy. And so I remember I spent $400 at a steakhouse in Shanghai, and it was a very nice steakhouse. They gave me 4 different types of salt to put on the steak. Like I got
awesome.
to decide.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, oh, it's going to be like $50, because like I lose track of the conversion. But I remember outside, I went 5 hours outside of Shanghai into the bamboo forest, and it was. Everything was like a meal was like $1, like everything was just ridiculously cheap. And so I remember I would like go to the ATM at my hotel and I would get out like $400. And I just remember like rolling up in the middle of nowhere. Like, oh, my meal is
check it out.
Yeah, that's your tip. It's like just like tipping crazy amounts, but really I tipped $4.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of funny to think about the currency difference. What was their currency like? Did it have Saddam Hussein's face on it?
So they pretty quickly. I've actually lost, but I did have a bill with Saddam on it. So prior to us going over there, it had Saddam on it, and very shortly after, it started having like I know one of the bills had a horse on it, maybe one had a building, but very shortly after the paper dollar changed. Very shortly after Saddam was out of power.
Did y'all put up any statues? Like I've been, like I was in, what's the country? Budapest. And they had like a statue of like Abraham Lincoln just randomly there.
That's funny.
Did y'all,
So I wasn't part of it. It's possible that America has, but I wasn't part of it. I was very, everything that I did was very, and I don't want to over glorify it, but the term dumb grunt. I mean, we were just like literally bullet sponges, frontal law, which I was ecstatic about. But we were, mushrooms, feed them shit, keep them in the dark.
Have you been shot before?
I have never been shot. This is all I did 3 tours and I got a little bit of shrapnel right there and that's it. I have, actually when that happened.
Were you wearing vest?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So you don't know what it's like to be hit with a bulletproof vest?
Nope. Never took a direct round.
Yeah, I want to.
It's probably like taking I have to assume like getting hit with a bat. My buddy had a guy that I actually, I actually get to mentor veterans with PTSD, and I was mentoring a guy last month, and he got shot twice in his shoulder, and it kind of like made about the size of a soda can, blew out the backside, and he said it felt like he took a sledgehammer. He said, I didn't feel anything. He said, I really felt like I got hit with a blunt object. But yeah, that's about as close as what I know for what it feels like.
Were there any women? Is this all guys?
For American forces and infantry, Marine Corps infantry, only men. As far as the Iraqi, you see women sometimes that they're very, very covered, extremely covered, like just eyes. But even at that, it's all the areas that I was at was not westernized. You would see, I mean, it was weird to see, but it's like a guy might be driving and like cars aren't that common, but some people had cars like these old, like beat up Toyota pickup trucks, and they would go out in these fields and pick whatever it was, the stuff that they were turning into bread or whatever, that, everything that they had, they would have to grow it. And they'd have these big sheets that they would put it on. And I shit you not, like in a little pickup, the guy would be driving and the woman would have the sheet like 5 times her size and would be walking beside the vehicle. Dead serious, like walking. But it wasn't like, like, oh yeah, she's in my control. She does what I say. It's just that's the culture. Women were, if possible, not seen, but definitely also not heard. And they just did what they had to do and shut up.
So your base, like, where did y'all get water? Where is sewage? Like, how does this all work? Like, if you just show up, like, you don't, it's not like you show up, you have an Amazon warehouse. You're like, oh, cool.
So, So, my third deployment, again, I was on Camp Fallujah. So that deployment I was in vehicles. I was mounted the whole time. While I did see a lot of action, a lot of combat action on that deployment, as far as amenities go, that deployment was incredible. But on my first and second deployment, you would be I mean, you would get ammo drops or food drops or ammo supply. It could be via a bird, a helicopter might drop something, a package for that might be water, food, ammo, whatever the case may be.
So you're not like building a well or anything and then drinking out of a well.
Oh no! So water, most of the water we would consume was bottled water. I don't know.
Must be nice being rich. Wow. Thanks for just showing off in here.
It was, I think it was called like Fiji or no. But yeah, no. Most of when I say most, I mean all, with the exception of if you didn't get a water drop in time, then we had iodine tablets, and you might need to purify water. That was not common, but on a couple instances that happened. But yeah, they would bring these pallets of water, and they might be like, if you needed if you're out in the middle of nowhere, an AAV or pretty much like a tracked vehicle might show up out in the middle of nowhere and open up, and here's your supplies, and then they leave.
Now, do you know why they would do that over building a well? Like, it just seems that like you're just like water's heavy and hard to transport.
Well, when you say building a well, I guess I'm not quite. We weren't very stationary.
Oh, okay.
We're constantly. I mean, like 9 times out of 10, you're not going to sleep
so
the
you
same
weren't
place
staying
tonight.
at a base.
No.
Okay.
No. Like yeah. Yeah, no. There was periods of time. I mean, there was some periods of time where you might stay at what we would call a fob or a forward.
So I guess I
base.
was thinking that you would check in at a base every day.
No. Like full on, like wherever you stop at the end of the day, drop some Constantine wire, set up guard, and here it is tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many people live in Iraq, or where you were? Do you know, or have a clue?
No.
How big were the buildings? Like, were they like 3 stories or 2 stories? Like, how sophisticated? Did they have the internet? I mean, I know it's 2003, 2008, so.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't do too much in Baghdad and Fallujah. I did get to experience Fallujah, and
where's Fallujah?
I'm not. I guess in relation to like South Iraq. What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, yeah, where is it? Like, where? What's the main city of Iraq?
Baghdad.
Yeah. Okay. So Baghdad. Where is it compared to Baghdad?
South of Baghdad.
Okay. How far? Like an hour, 2 hours?
Not sure.
Okay.
Not sure.
I put this TV here so we could pull it up on the TV, but it's not working right, so you have nothing to pull up.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So you got to keep in mind again that these are great questions, and I never went back and really educated myself on a lot of these things. But while I was there, I was really just living in the moment.
Yeah.
I definitely have driven through Baghdad, but in relation, I'm not sure how far. Baghdad definitely had some form of, which again, I've only driven through, but my understanding is because Saddam, he liked some nicer things, and he had a couple dollars. So my understanding is there's some pretty elegant, some pretty elegant palaces and things of that nature in Baghdad. In Fallujah, they did have high-rise buildings, maybe upwards of maybe 4, possibly a 5th story. But probably not much more than that, and it wasn't overly populated. There would be like maybe 2 or 3 main streets that would have the high rises, and then everything else spreads out really quick afterwards. Most of the areas that I operated would be on my second deployment. I did a lot inside of Fallujah, but on my first deployment, we were operating in a lot of small. I'll use the word villages. I mean, you'd be out in the middle of nowhere, and then there might be like 4, and I'll use the term houses, huts. I mean, whatever they would have, whatever materials they'd have to make shelter out of, that would be in a general area. And then those people obviously would create their own community and be their own village. But for the main part, outside of any of the bigger cities like Fallujah or Baghdad, it's really small villages and such.
So I believe in a spirit world. Did you feel a presence there that was like dark? Like, did you feel a weight when you landed that was different when you were in the U.S.? And I know you're not great at feelings at this point.
No. But I say no in the sense of and like kind of what you touched on. I think it's important to note that I was just so excited to be there. I really was. When I came back from my first deployment, I found out about that I was able to go on my second deployment and like literally ecstatic. And I regret some of it now, but it all worked out in its own way. On my first deployment, we had the people that my seniors, or the people that were leading me, it was a blind leading the blind. They had never been to war before. And they were at the end of their deployment, or at the end of their enlistment. So they went to Iraq, and as soon as we came back, they got out and left. And so they didn't want to deal with a lot of the stuff they just wanted to get out. And so, I mean, I vividly remember, and I've at the end of the deployment, we had to fill out this, like, to say a questionnaire, but like a screening to find out like how much mental damage do we, what was the collateral damage here? And I vividly remember that, like, they got us together in a group, and they were like, fill out number 1, check off this box, 2, put this here. And I remember I remember thinking like, well, it might say, well, hey, are you having trouble sleeping? Are you having this? Are you having that? Or are you having nightmares? And I remember thinking like, well, yeah, I'm having trouble with that. And then and I remember one of the guys asking, he was like, well, what if I can't sleep, or what if I am whatever it was, whatever. And they were like, no, they're like, dude, it doesn't matter. They're like, you fill it out like this. They were like, all that shit's fucking bullshit. They're like, if you fucking say that, you're gonna have to go talk to the fucking wizard. You don't want to do that. And so, like, literally, we filled out the paper the way they told us to fill out the paper.
No.
Yeah. And then, but I didn't care too much, because I also, at the time, I really thought that, like, now I understand, like, empathy and things of that nature. But, like, at the time, I really did think that, like, so what, you're having fucking nightmares, like, move on. and ultimately, I share this with people all the time, and in part of my journey, I had PTSD much, much worse from my childhood than I ever had from war. I remember as a teen and as a young adult, I mean, I would wake up in different places in my house, like curled up in a corner, like panting and like sweating and like just totally disorientated. And I would wake up in trying to figure out, I would be trying to orientate myself to where was the abuse about to come from. Where was my stepmother? Like I never had that instance from war. And so in that manner, when they're like, you just suck it up. And I thought, I was like, yeah, because I've been sucking it up, right? Like, I already have PTSD. So I'm like, yeah, I get it. You suck it up, move on, let's go. And so second deployment, when I got back from my second deployment, actually my third deployment, that's where I was with that, I was in vehicles and on Camp Fallujah, which, again, the luxuries are a lot nicer. When I came back from my second deployment, I heard about that unit that was deploying, and they needed more. They didn't have enough. The term is bodies. They didn't have enough bodies to deploy, and so I volunteered to go back. And I had only been that George Bush had implemented dwell time, which essentially said that for every day you spent at war, you'd have a day at peace, and that the government wouldn't violate that. So if you spent 300 days at war, you'd be guaranteed 300 days in peace before you went back. But you were allowed to violate your own dwell time. And so when I volunteered to go back that third time, it was...
can you combine it? Would you get more when you came back?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, it was gone if you gave it up. But the government couldn't violate it, but you could say, I'll give it up. So I did. I went on my third deployment. And then when I came back from my third deployment, actually, I heard about another unit that was leaving in like a month, and I was like, fuck yeah. Like I didn't like in between, like literally in between deployments, like I was just counting down the days to when I got to go back. And so
how did you make it to Tennessee?
So I made it to Tennessee on a Greyhound. So actually, when I after getting out of the Marine Corps,
with your upbringing, you get on a Greyhound bus, you're like, damn, this thing's nice. It's got a bathroom.
That's great. Yes. So yeah, I was first class too in the grass. I started. So in 2011, when I got out of the military, I had been with a lady for most of the time that I'd served, for most of that 8 years, and you wouldn't believe that it was a toxic relationship or that most of it was my fault, but nonetheless.
So you met somebody.
Yeah.
And you had a significant other.
Yeah, we have 2 children together.
Okay.
And we never got married, and which is probably for the best. And
when did this start? We got to go way back.
So I actually I met this girl. So when I go out to when I go out to California before I leave for my first deployment, like I said, I'm there for like 10 days. I meet her during that time and just meet. And so when I go to that deployment,
and this is before Tinder, so this is like
we had to officially swipe right.
yeah, you looked at her, you're like, yeah,
yeah. We actually exchanged maybe 1 or 2 letters during that first deployment. Actually, we didn't have any form of relationship. We didn't even have physical contact prior to that deployment, and then after that deployment. We did.
Is that how 2 kids came about? Is that how that works?
Now,
were you would you consider yourself in love with her at that point, or was it just like, this is a friend and I haven't had a lot of these? Like,
I think so. Sadly,
yeah.
I didn't even know how to love someone. I didn't know how to love myself, and I was never, even in the beginning, to be honest, I was never nice to her. And I think maybe at some level, and I don't know for sure, I don't want to overspeak for her, but at some level, I was probably a little bit of a fascination for her, because I never treated her in a way that a lady should be treated, and she hung around. The relationship within, by the time I went to we had begun within, I don't know, a year or so. We were both cheating on each other, but still living in the same house and so on and so forth. And I thought we were going to try to make it work out. But again, I didn't know how to, like, whatever, like, I feel like she did a bunch of horrible things, but at the end, but literally, I did not know how to be a husband, a father. I didn't know how to love literally. I know I tell people that, like, even people that, like, I don't have the most extreme stories. People have more extreme. Okay. But even people that had shitty examples of parenting when they grew up, like, it was probably accompanied with good examples too.
Yeah.
But when you have just shitty examples or no examples,
I know, it's crazy. Like, I look at so I feel like the biggest white girl ever sharing this. But, like, my dad never had conversations with me. Like, he was still around. He's still a good father, but, like, he never, like, I found out about sets from, like, my neighbor, like, my dad never sat down and was like, this is how the world works.
Right.
And so, like, I'm like a little like, man, I wish you would have just manned up enough to, like, had man-to-man conversations with me.
Yeah.
And his dad never had conversations with him, and so I get it. But again, like, it's different than, like, me watching my dad kill my brother and, running away at 11 and then being around because you were around troubled kids.
Yeah.
I think that's, like, something that's, like, even when you finally escaped, you were still around a bunch of people that probably didn't escape. Like, how many were physically abused versus just, like, terrible kids?
When I'm in detention center? No. Most of these are drug charges and things of that nature with these other kids. I was even made fun of for the fact that I was there because of abuse.
So you have no street cred at that point.
I did not have any street cred, but they did know that I was willing to fight to ensure that I would stay there. No, seriously, it didn't take long. People would literally be like, he's crazy. Like, it wasn't like, I'm not, in no level was it about that I was good at fighting, but, like, someone knew, like, if you mess with him, like, you will have to fight. So unless you're actually ready to, just leave him be.
So did you ever try drugs and alcohol? Is that part of your story at all?
Alcohol, yes. Smoked plenty of weed, but outside of weed, never an interest in other drugs. I've never done any psychedelics, but I've actually recently been studying on what people are doing with microdosing and things like that. Alcohol for sure. I had a stunt with alcohol for a while. I went to, while I was in the Marine Corps, I actually got ordered, if you will, to go do a 30-day inpatient treatment for alcohol, which, at the time, I still drink to this day. I don't to say drink it often. I mean, whenever I feel like it, it just doesn't tend to be that often because I'm too busy, if you will. But I remember when I went there, they were like, you're an alcoholic, you can never drink again. And I remember, I literally remember thinking, this is at like 23, 25, I don't know. I literally remember thinking, like, no, like, there's some fucked up shit going on. And, like, I'm using alcohol as a Band-Aid, but I don't think I'm an alcoholic. And they're like, no, you're an alcoholic. Like, you just can't admit it. You're an alcoholic. And I look back and, like, I don't ever tell other alcoholics that they can drink again. But, like, I look back and I'm like, dude, you're not just a fucking alcoholic. There's something under there going on that needs to be processed.
Well, yeah, I mean, some are genetically disimposed to be like, like I have several friends that literally, if they have any, they'll be at 30 a day and get a DUI, so there are some people that are like, their DNA is like, they're highly addictive. But highly addictive, it's not sometimes it's alcohol, but most time it's just highly addictive in nature and everything.
Right.
Take me through. So what age do you become a father?
So my son turned 14 in January, and I'll turn 36 I think next week. So what does that put us at, 22 for my son? And I don't know how. I didn't know how to be a father. I wasn't even being a father. I mean, sometimes I would be home, but I wasn't even being a father. And in 2011, he was born in 2007. So in 2011, which I think we actually separated in the middle of 2010. So he's like 3.5 years old now. Up to that point in time, we had begun to establish a relationship, me and my son. I would take him out. I liked fishing and shooting, so I'd take him out. I got pictures of him out fishing and shooting before he's even 5 years old.
Amen. Praise God.
Yeah, that's right. And then my daughter, Juliana, she was born pretty much right after she was born, we separated. And so I wasn't part of her life for a long time, and I actually got custody of my kids about a year ago. They live with me now, and both of them. And then, but for 10 years of her life, I wasn't involved. When me and their mother separated, so I actually initiated the separation with her mother. I like, clearly shit wasn't right. Like, clearly, but I didn't know how to make it right. But clear, like, it was horrible, and it literally got to a point where, like, I literally woke up one day and I was like, we can't keep doing this. Like, this, like, we argue about the fact that we argue.
Yeah, because there's this idea that when you're in a fight, and this is probably what happened with you a lot. And I'm not a psychologist, so I could be wrong, but you thought you were fighting about this, but you're really fighting about this.
Yeah.
It's like you were like, oh, she's mad because I did this. When she's mad because of something over here.
100%,
yeah.
100%.
And so, and you not having any empathy or really knowing how to, like, I grew up in a good family, but I kind of raised myself. The youngest of four, was homeschooled, didn't have a lot of friends. So I know the kind of alone doing your own thing. And so, like, not a lot of people teach you things. Like I struggle with empathy a lot. And I'm getting better at it. Being married has helped me get better at being empathetic. Yeah. But so I get that, I'm guessing that, like, you thought that y'all were having arguments about something else when in her head it was about this. And that's what was always going on. Where if you knew what the arguments were about, I'm sure it'd been
could have come
better.
to a conclusion. Yeah. And being able to emotionally control myself at this point in time in my life also, anger is, my go-to. Anger was a problem. Like breaking phones, like punching holes in wall, like the whole Kyle show, literally. For real.
Yeah, I mean, I'm into Monster Energy drinks, and I ride motorcycles. And
I remember one time I'd got.
Did you have White Oakleys?
No, it wasn't that cool. Yeah, I remember one time I would throw and break from all that stuff. I was not in control of my emotions. Now, me and her never had issues with. I've never physically hit her. I've always felt very.
You're like, I was just mentally abusive.
Well, and literally, I literally was, and verbally, and but I mean, I wouldn't like degrade her, but nonetheless, I remember one time, I was so mad, I took my phone and I was going to throw it, and I remember thinking to myself, that, like, I was like, dude, you're gonna need your fucking phone. Like, don't, I remember having this short conversation with myself, thinking, like, I know you're fucking mad right now. Just wait just a fucking second. Like, you're gonna break your phone. It's gonna be $200. You ain't even got $200. And I ended up throwing the phone anyway and breaking it. And I remember, I had that conversation with myself, and I remember afterwards, like, reflecting, thinking, like, dude, am I really not in control of myself? Which, I needed to take the journey that I took. You good?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, explosive. Anger was the go-to. I didn't know what happy was. I didn't know what joy was. Maybe if I bought something nice, like I felt happy for just a little short period, but other than that, I didn't know what happy was. And I didn't know how to be happy.
So
and
tell me about this change. So you don't know what happiness is. You're in a terrible relationship.
Yeah.
You don't know who you are. You don't have control of yourself.
No clue who I am as a human.
So what happens?
So I end up, I decide to separate with her, and that's just a...
By the way, do you get paid? After you're in the military, you get paid in the future, or like, do you get a check every month from them because you served? How does that work?
No, that's funny. No, you do not. Some people do from the VA. I do have a 0% rating from the VA, which is a rating, even though it's 0, and that just means that I do not receive any money from the VA, but they will medically take care of the issues that I received while I was serving. So people do receive a disability check for maybe hearing loss. Obviously, if they have had maybe obviously things extreme like missing limbs or shot, of course. But even PTSD and things of that nature, people do receive monetary compensation. I didn't and still don't. And it's worth noting that after you get out, the check on the 1st and 15th doesn't show up in your bank account. And you cannot go back to the chow hall. No, so when I got out, so we're in the middle of this messy breakup, and I don't even know how to. I mean, I'm being mean to her, she's being mean to me. She pretty much took everything physical, like other than like clothes or things that had. I mean, even things that didn't have value, she took it. She did. But what's important to know right now, this is not about putting her down. It's just the story. Yeah. It's just the story. But so she put me in a bad spot. And I think at some level she felt so somewhere she definitely, like, I was never I was never an example. I would never treat her the way a woman should be treated. I never did. But it's somewhere she had hope that it would work or something, because she was so mad that that we were officially breaking up. You'd think like, this is your freebie out. But it's somewhere, so she was resentful there. And I'm in California at the time. I did the whole time I served in California. And when I get out, she is from California. Her parents lived there at the time. So she takes the kids and goes down and moves in with her parents, and I end up getting a studio when I first get out in like this like ghetto area. It's like real cheap. And she tells me somewhere along the line, she's like, I'm taking the kids, and my parents are moving to Pennsylvania. I'm going with them. And I asked her not to leave because of, the kids. And she was like, she was pretty bold that like, nah, this is going down. And so she took the kids, and which we'll get back to that studio scene, but let's talk about the kids. The kids go, and then honestly, there was periods of time when I asked for a P.O. box to send them a handwritten letter, and she said no. She held some resentment. But it was a very messy. The relationship was messy the whole time. Yeah. And then a very messy breakup. And so there was one time, maybe like 4 years ago, she was like, I'm going to be visiting my sister in, I think it was in Kentucky. And she was like, you can meet me at this park at this time if you want to see your son. And I was like, what about my daughter? And she was like, she doesn't know you. You're not going to get to see her, whatever. So I drove up there and I seen my son. And at the time he was like, no, it was 4, maybe it was 5. I don't know. I don't even think he was 10 yet. I think it was like 8 or 9. And there was still like, almost like we didn't skip a beat, like this connection. Like we were out just doing goofy stuff. Like, it was so cool. And so I tried to advance that a little bit, but she was so hurt, which understandably, like totally understand. She was so hurt by everything I did. She would pretty much position herself like, it was like, you're going to do this my way or we ain't doing it. Her. So she was so hurt. It was like, now she was getting her say this go around. And I was not, even 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that was probably about 5 years ago or so, maybe 6, because I think he was about 8 or 9 at the time. I was still not developed enough to get out of my own way. And so probably about 2 years ago, I reached out to her and I was like, hey, I'm sorry for everything I did. And what do I need to do to get established with the kids? And she was like, well, why do you want to do this? And I'm like, no, just totally. And there, she didn't just fold. She was still mean. She's still sometimes a little bit mean, but I've learned she's on her journey. I learned and matured enough to realize that, dude, it doesn't fucking matter whatever she wants. Like, dude, you're going to be there for your kids or not.
Yeah.
So
take me through this. So you get out of the military, and what's your job? Like, what do you do?
So when I first get out, I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna figure it out. I don't care, I actually started doing, I was doing, personal training before I got out of the military.
That's a real surprise. I didn't see that one coming.
and honestly, bodybuilding, I was doing competitive bodybuilding. And at the time it was like, it was a,
what do you think about blackface and bodybuilding?
I don't know.
Where people like paint themselves so orange that they kind of look black. Have you seen this?
Yeah. I've done it. Yeah. And it was honestly like bodybuilding. I loved it. I did it for a while competitively, and it was. But what got me away from it, because I thought
you had no problem with that strict food diet, right?
No, seriously, yeah. And it was fun, and it became an identity for a while, and I loved it because it was like, you can't mess with me. Being a bodybuilder, like the level of discipline that I'm putting out, and then obviously the product that comes out of that. But as I grew in my journey, I realized that that's not who I am. That's just something I used along the way, and I'm so thankful for that. I get out, and I think I don't, like every other challenge, I'm like, fuck it, I'll figure it out. I don't give a shit. And so I show up at this studio, and I go out.
Join the ballet. Yeah. Okay, wrong studio.
I didn't know how to. It was sobering. I didn't realize, so for these last 8 years, I had the camaraderie of people that I literally went to war with. People that I would die for them and they would die for me, and whatever. Like if there's only one sandwich and there's 6 of us, we're splitting this motherfucker 6 ways. And I didn't. When I got out, that was gone. There's people that went back to their homes. There's people that are still serving, but I didn't have family. I didn't have friends.
Why did you get out? It seems like you'd be the type of guy that'd be in the military his whole life.
Yeah.
And you love it.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I was getting in, I got in trouble with part of that breakup. There was, definitely I got into some trouble. And also I really wanted to, after my 3rd deployment, I tried to go back to my 4th deployment. I volunteered. It was like a month later. And that's where I got flagged and diagnosed with PTSD and TBI, because they, obviously they're like, hey, this guy's coming back for like a month and just keeps going back to war. Like, that's not normal. And so they're like, you have to go see the psych. And so I went in and talked to him, and I didn't think nothing. I'm just talking to him. I thought everything was like, this is what you guys wanted. And they're like, oh yeah. They're like, no, you cannot go back to Iraq. And I had recently re-enlisted. I had like 3.5 years left on that enlistment. And they said I couldn't go back, and that I would have to use that next 3.5 years. Like, they said I was non-deployable after that, and that I would have to use those next 3.5 years. I would have to pick a non-deployable unit. And so I ended up going to the Marine Corps Mounted Color Guard, which is, I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, was just an amazing honor. I've been able to ride as we did the opening ceremony for the Kentucky Derby in 2007. I've been able to ride as the lead element for the Rose Parade a couple years. But it was when I realized I couldn't go back to a war anymore in 2007, like really I started that's where a lot of the alcohol use starts coming in, like the relationship really starts going downhill. So over the next 3.5 years, really the destructive behaviors come into place. I'm getting in trouble in the military, and I'm like, fuck this. Like, if you're not gonna let me go to war, like, I want out then. I want to enjoy the fucking freedom. Like, I want to not shave if I don't fucking feel like shaving. So really, when I wasn't able to go back
Bad
to war,
boy over here.
Yeah, right. Be a rebel.
I don't want to shave. Dude, I struggle to shower sometimes.
That's funny. But yeah, so getting out, really the biggest thing was not being able to go back to war. At the time when I was going over there, but like I said, by the time I didn't realize it on my first deployment, but by the time I got to my second, my third deployment, I was sure. In my mind, I didn't tell people this, but I was sure that I would go back until I die. And wherever that landed, like, I was going to go back until I died, because I thought like that was just like incredibly honorable way to use my life. And if I didn't die there, like, I would probably just be someone I would end up being, you know, a criminal or something probably. Like I literally thought that. I was
You'd
like
be a great criminal. You're big.
So really the military,
street smart.
the military really it wasn't as fun no more when I couldn't go to war. And I was already locked into that second enlistment. I had 3.5 years left on that second enlistment. So we ride that out. And
do you still get to, you know, when they're like military gets aboard first on planes, do you still get to do that? Or is that only active?
I think it's so in that, yeah, today actually, when I think it's for active, okay. I think, yeah. But I don't, I honestly, I don't, I enjoyed serving, and I always feel like I always like whenever I see someone like whether it be a modern or especially used to be what would be older vets, when I see them wearing their hats, I go up to them. I don't say anything about my service, and I thank them for their service. You see, whatever anyone did in the military, whatever they did in the military, like the people that are wearing that hats, like they feel like I don't ever ask for military discounts. Like I feel like if I volunteered,
must be nice being rich.
Yeah. I like if I volunteered to come over and mow your lawn and then I got done and asked for something, I didn't really volunteer to come over and mow your lawn. Now, I mean, to each their own, to each person, but nonetheless, you know, I always seek an opportunity for those that need that accolade or need that whatever that may be. I want to be there for them, but nonetheless, when I got out, I didn't have any form of plan. And when I got out, I was like first day or two, I probably was like, "Oh, this is awesome." Slept on the couch. I didn't even have it, to be honest. I literally actually sleeping on the floor, and I for real. And but no, you know, no big deal. Yeah, whatever. I mean, it was fine.
Nobody's gonna abuse me when I wake up.
No one's shooting. There's no mortars. It's a nice floor. So when I finally, you know, it didn't take too long, and I was like, all right, I gotta get a job, right? So I didn't know, I had no clue. I didn't have a computer. I wasn't intelligible enough to write a resume, nor did I even understand of what should be going in a resume. And mind you, my life skills do not translate well in the civilian world. Like, I mean, for real, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
And so I started to go apply at and I'm walking.
You went to Russia and you were like, "Hey guys."
I started applying to like grocery stores, gas stations. Like I didn't even know I literally did not know what to do. And I'm not getting called back. I applied to Chili's to be a server and they straight like turned me down. And like
Chili's hates veterans.
And so I didn't know what to do, and so one day I was
do you learn any life skills in the military? Like, did you learn how to write a resume? Like,
man, I'll put it to you this way: any class that I was in that information was given to me, between it being a horrible delivery service, between it being a horrible delivery on their part and me not being receptive enough to get it, it was nothing. And I do believe that it is my belief that the military definitely. I mean, we the military, you know, teach you how to. I mean, we teach you how to make it okay for interspecies killing. We teach you how to you know, to troubleshoot any friggin' weapon. But when it gets done, when it comes time for the unwind, you know, I always made a joke. Like I went to this debrief one time after one of my deployments. And one of the people literally said, like, this was not the whole brief, right? But this piece stood out to me, and I was like, Jesus. He was like, all right. He's like, when y'all go home and you're sitting at the dinner table, the Thanksgiving dinner table, he's like, don't say pass the fucking gravy at the dinner table. And like that was his message of how to be social in society. Don't say pass the fucking gravy at the dinner table. I was like, all right. Yeah, I think the military definitely in the future probably needs to do a lot better job on those kind of things. But so I end up in a car dealership. I was just walking. I'm just in this at this time. I'm thinking to myself,
what kind of cars?
It was a Toyota, Dodge, and Jeep. And actually, let's back up before we even get there.
So You sold one car that worked and two that were iffy.
That's funny. Let's back up a little bit. And so honestly, like I can't get a job. I end up getting an eviction notice on this studio, and I'm living in like this trailer park. This is like a site-built little studio thing. It's really small. And the guy that's running the trailer park was a Marine once upon a time, so he lets me squat on this eviction notice. I have no utilities at the time, but we're not homeless. I actually, this is where actually I contemplated, and I even agreed to myself that I would kill myself. Now, not to ruin the end of the story, but I'm still here. But I remember having this conversation with myself, and I thought, because at this time I don't have a job. I mean, I don't have my kids. I have destroyed a relationship. I'm pretty certain like the getting to die in war was taken away from me. I'm pretty confident that I'll never have a sound relationship based upon my mental standings. I'm like, I really thought to myself, and I mean consciously, like we are not in, no alcohol's involved, no drugs are involved. No, I mean none. I couldn't afford them. And I really
That's
thought,
how you know you're not an addict. See, an addict would like rob somebody.
You're like, I can't find. We're gonna find a way.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's what an addict does.
Yeah. So I literally thought to myself that I came to the conclusion that I was a burden on society to exist. I lowered the value of society just to exist. And I thought to myself, I remember thinking to myself, like, who would I negatively affect if I killed myself right now? And I thought about my dad, and to this day, I still feel confident. Like, I'm sure that at some level, like, I think my dad loves me. I mean, like, I'm his son, because I have kids. Like, I don't think he, but like, I feel confident my dad would have had a reason, or some people may say an excuse, to not even show up to my funeral. I feel very confident saying that to this day. And so even then I thought to myself, I was like, yeah, like we're not going to inconvenience anybody. Like, the worst part about it is the people have to come clean up. And so I thought to myself that I was going to shoot myself in the head with a 40 caliber pistol. And I remember, I mean, I was holding the pistol, and again, I remember thinking to myself, like, consciously, I was like, so can I actually do this? Like, if I put this pistol
Glock or revolver?
It was a Glock. So, and I remember thinking, like,
what kind of round were you going to use?
Round?
Yeah.
Oh, like what? I don't know.
Hollow points?
It might have been, dude. It might have been. Who knows?
Were you using range ammo? Because you did range ammo. You might be in the hospital.
It might have been target load. I don't know. But yeah. But I remember consciously thinking, like, can we do this?
I'm not trying to make light of this subject for anybody who ever watches this. I just thought it'd be funny. Okay, continue.
Yeah. Well, and yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, I think it is very important to. I definitely incorporate humor when I tell my stories, and sometimes it's very awkward when I tell a joke and people look, and I'm like, no, go ahead and laugh. Please don't make this more awkward. But so I consciously thought about it, and I was like, yeah. And I remember coming to the conclusion. I was like, okay, I'll do it. Like, and it wasn't like, am I going to do this? Like, it was like I was holding the pistol, and I was like looking, and I was like, can I do this? And do I do this? And so I decided yes, and I remember thinking, I mean, right there, like before we even stand up, I remember thinking to myself, like, I was like, it wasn't like nothing. It was the most liberating decision I ever made in my life. And I felt so free. I mean, I felt so free in that moment. I felt so limitless, weightless. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, fuck it. Like, if I'm going to kill myself, like, is there anything else I want to do before I die? Fucking anything. Because nothing matters now. Not like, we can go rob a bank. Like, it doesn't fucking matter. And I remember thinking, like, I mean, I was running through my head, like, is there anything really like crazy that you want to fucking do? Like, let's go do it. And I don't know. People ask me this day who's the author or the title of the book. I don't know. But in proximity of me, there was a book on forgiveness. And prior to this, someone probably heard part of my story or something along the way. Like, hey, read this book or something. Who knows? But prior to this, I didn't read books. And so when I seen this book, it was almost like a challenge to God to say, because up to this point in time, I have a relationship with God, but I don't have what most people have in terms of religion. And while we don't have to go too deep down that rabbit hole, most people believe what they believe because they were told to believe that. I didn't have that privilege or curse, if you will. But I did believe that there was God at some level. And so I thought to myself, I remember looking at this book and thinking like, well, fuck it. Like someone wrote this book and is getting paid to fucking relay this message on forgiveness. And so like prior to this in my life, I think that like all these books are fucking hokey pokey. Like it's all bullshit. But like right now in this moment,
you had that approach to life.
Right now in this moment, I'm thinking like, well, like they wrote, like there's got to be something in this book, right? And so like almost as a challenge to God, like I don't recall literally saying this, but almost as a challenge to God, it was like I'm gonna read this book, and if there's something in this motherfucker, like right now, like here, you gonna give it to me now, or we're done. And I read that book, and the biggest takeaway, my life doesn't change, you know, it's one book, right? The biggest takeaway, like this book in some level, whatever was said in that book or whatever state of mind I was in, my takeaway was that forgiveness was a discipline, was my takeaway from the book. And so I thought, no one has more discipline than me. Fuck it, she's forgiven. Just like that. Boom. If it's discipline, done. I'm making a choice. And it was like, it framed it like forgiveness was a decision. And so I literally was like, all right, fuck it. So like prior to, let me also add
it's
some.
Because, you know, Jocko's quote is discipline equals freedom.
Yeah.
And like, that's kind of like what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Right down that road. And,
sorry to sidetrack you.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, no. But so I read this book, and it framed it that it was a decision, and that, you know, it was our discipline to make that decision, and that nothing else has to be done, that we just have to make that decision. And so I thought, now that's what I started. So prior to this, I think it's important to note, like for the first 25 years of my life, I would literally, there was so much torture that took place, and we talked about some heavy shit. People died. My brother got murdered, but there's still like so many crazy stories. Like I almost died a couple times. Like one time my stepmother comes to mind. Like my stepmother shoved frozen jalapenos down my throat. I'm not fucking really sure why. And I almost died. And I remember my sister, her daughter, came, she fucking left me. My stepmother, she fucking walked away, shoved them and fucking walked away. Like, fuck them. And my sister came and physically pulled these out of my fucking throat. And, so I would, for a period of time, I literally, my life, well, not a period of time, for my entire life up till I'm about 20, up till this point in time when I start this hokey pokey journey, I would daydream. And I don't mean the nightmares that I had. I would daydream about torturing her, and I would vividly like spend hours, like where would I take her and how would I keep her alive, because I didn't want her to die too quickly. And then in that manner, like I would go into like, you know, how would I disguise her being missing so they wouldn't find her, while like all that, like I would daydream about this stuff. So we get to this place in this book, and it was like, all right, forgiveness. And so, I'm like, all right, it's a decision. Fucking, I'm doing it. Like, she's forgiven. And obviously it didn't last, at first, even maybe like minutes. And I would be like, dude, there's no fucking way. Like, that's cute, but there's no fucking way. Like, she's getting away with this shit. Like, literally. And I would keep, remind, I'm like, no. I'm like, dude, like to myself, like hold myself accountable. Like for real. I'm like, dude, you fucking said you were going to do it. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, I get what you want to do as a retaliation, but you said you were going to do this. Like, fucking do it. Forgive her. And so like, it's just enough to get me literally to not kill myself. We're not solved or anything. And so then I'm out, walking around. I'm literally like, now I'm like just getting out of, like, I don't have no job, nothing. Like I'm literally fucking melting, about to die. So like I'm like getting dressed, and I'm like in the morning, I'm like leaving on foot, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but like, we gotta get out of this box. And so I enter into that dealership, and because when I was walking past, I was like, huh. I'm like, they need clean cars. So and then I was like, hey, you guys need someone to wash the cars? And they were like, no, we already have a porter. And at the time, I didn't even know what that word meant. And I look at the guy, and I was like, and he just said it like, so like, he didn't even give me a fucking chance. Like, he's like, nah, I already got a porter. And I was like, what about a janitor? I was like, I will fucking clean the toilets cleaner than you've ever seen them before. And he's like, are you serious? I was like, dude, I'm dead serious. I was like, I'll go do it right now. And I was very fucking serious. And he was like, I like your tenacity. You want to try sales? Which I didn't know. I was like, I asked, like, what is sales? And he was like, come back at this time. He's like, talk to this guy. And he's like, and put some fucking nicer clothes on. I don't even know what I was wearing. But so I went home and I literally took whatever the best clothes I had, which weren't nothing too nice, and put heavy stuff on them to try to get the wrinkles out. And I went back and met with that guy, and in sales, I didn't know prior, but everyone's kind of, well, you have to be, motivation, right? So, you have to be to get up to go do it again every day. But this is the first time in my life, like motivation in the Marine Corps is different than motivation in sales. Motivation in the Marine Corps is like, get up that fucking hill or I'm going to whoop your ass. Like, all right, I'll go up the hill then.
Yeah.
But this motivation was like, people were like smiling, high-fiving. And I'm like, this is the coolest fucking energy in the world. Like I've never experienced it in my life. So the guy's like, yeah, I'll give you an opportunity selling cars. And so, I show up and start selling these cars, and he recommends a book for me to read on sales. So I read this book on sales because I just got done with this forgiveness book. It was I'm not sure of that one either. Yeah. But it might have been it wasn't Zig Ziglar. Who was it? I forget. It was one of the old guys.
Got it.
And so I read this book, and so whatever little nugget I took from that book, I started implementing in sales. And I didn't know sales. I was not a salesperson. I didn't know how to sell things.
You didn't know people.
I didn't know people.
Selling is people.
Right. But one thing I did have was a lack of fear and an understanding that I needed to eat. So when I would sit down at the table, they'd send me out there and they'd be like, he's going to have to put 10 grand down to buy this car. And I'd go out there and be like, you have to put 10 grand down to buy this car. And they'd be like, no way. And I'd be like, way. like I wasn't even arguing about it. Like these other salespeople were, well, let me go see what I can get done for you. I'm like, no, they said you need 10 grand. And so, I didn't know what I was doing, but lo and behold, people were like, all right, I guess I need to do it then. Because I was so sure. I wasn't sure. I just knew that I needed to eat. So
you're scary.
You sign. I make a couple sales, and so at this point in time, I'm like really starting to vibe like this forgiveness thing. Like I'm still like constantly like by the day reneging on this decision and remaking this decision like by the day. And so now I make a couple dollars. We're like just a couple months into sales, and a couple months ago we were almost homeless. And so I start somewhere along the lines, I get linked up with Joe Verdi, and I read one of his books. And then in the back, it's like, call this number for whatever. And I'm like, at the time, again, I don't know sales. Don't call the number in the back of the book. so I'm like, he's got the answers. So I'm like, what's up, Joe Verdi?
See, I'm always like, who buys this shit?
I did. That's what it's for. So I call this guy up and he sells the shit out of me, man. He's like, yeah, we're gonna help you, blah 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 blah, all the good stuff, all the good sales.
Whatever problem you have, I'm the answer.
He's the answer, And I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm like, how much is it? And he's like, it's $3,500 for 2 days. And I was like, American dollars? So he's like, no. He tells me, Joe Verdi, he says, no. He's like, you don't pay for it. He's like, the dealership pays for it. I was like, what? I go in the next day and tell my dealership, hey, I'm going to this thing. I talked to Joe Verdi, $3,500. He said, you guys pay for it.
You didn't even sell them on it. You're like, hey, it's already a done deal.
He said, I can go. You pay for it. So that response was pretty much what I got from them. So I call and tell this guy back. Now, at this time, I am like vibing hard on life. Like, this is the most motivation I've ever been around. Like, the books are kind of working. I've read like 2 at this time. This guy's telling me how awesome I'm going to be if I go to his workshop.
I'm not saying I'm a genius.
Yeah. So I call Verdi back and I tell him, like, dude, they're not paying for it. I'm like, they won't pay for it. And he's like, all right. He's like, you got to pay for it. I was like, I can't pay for that. And he's like selling me on it. So I literally, I ended up paying for it. I ended up paying for this like a couple months in, and like, this is everything that I have. Like, I made a couple sales, like saved, and like, we're talking like, I mean, all in, like, wipe the account out. And it's in Orange County, California. And I literally like, I think I slept in my car when I went out there for the seminar. And at that ticket price, you can imagine, but there was only like 8 or 10 people there. And there's like just 1 or 2 tables. And when we first got there, he was like, who here's making 50 grand a year in sales right now? And so everyone had their hand up. So I was like, me? So he's like, who here's making 75? So a few hands went down. I felt comfortable. I was like, all right. And he's like, who here's making over 100K? And so 2 guys next to me still have their hands up. And I'm like, And so he's like, how much are you making? One guy's maybe like 1.25. And like, he's like, how much are you making? And maybe he's like 137 or 140 something. And I'm looking at these guys and I'm like so ecstatic to be sitting next to them. I'm like, they got all the fucking answers. And Joe Verdi, man, changed my life forever. The next thing he's like, how much are you making? 125. How much are you making? 140. And he's like, how long you been in that rut? And I was like, what? What? Told you you're in a rut? I mean, seriously, I will never forget that. And that was one of the first like aha moments in life of what was possible. Like this guy, like I was ready to do whatever for the answers for him. And then I just watched someone tell him he was in a rut. Like that was like one of the first times I was like, of what I realized what was humanly possible out there. Like that 130 was not even like starting to scratch. So anyway, go through this seminar, learn a few things. This seminar was more around, it was very salesy. It wasn't about like personal development. It was about like how to do sales and how to handle and direct people and so on and so forth. So I came back and I'm doing okay in sales, but I start reading more books, and I'm in car sales. And so over a period of time from when I start car sales, about 2 years expires, and maybe I've read like 5 books at this time. And I know you said I was a genius at 2, but at 5 I was like really a genius. And at this time, I thought that I had forgiven I felt like I had actually forgiven my stepmother. I was starting to be in control of my emotions. We would still have plenty of outbursts, but there was periods of time where I was in control of them. Whereas before, like we weren't even having these periods of time. And so at this time, I think I got
What is your income at the end of these 2 years?
Maybe $50K a year type situation. Okay. I mean, maybe by the end of the 2 years, I mean, we got up to like doing about 12 or 15 cars a month, which would have put me tracking more towards that 6-figure, but I didn't hang out long enough to actually allow that to pay out. And so I thought that I had my car got stolen in California, and I now had no vehicle. And I wasn't sure, which I wasn't too worried about, to be really honest with you.
What kind of car was it?
Oh, I mean, it was a Ford Escort, a 2-door Ford Escort. I mean, it was a piece of crap.
Do you ever wonder, why would somebody steal this?
Yeah. And from me. But so now I had a decision. I was like, I didn't have a car, so I was like, well, now I can't even drive to the dealership that I'm working at. I couldn't walk. It was not even an option to walk. So now there's what do we do for a living? And I thought to myself, I was like, dude, why don't I just go out to Tennessee? I don't know like what I'll do, but we don't have nothing here holding us down.
Why Tennessee?
So now my dad and my stepmom live in Tennessee, and so I'm 2 years into this journey, and I think to myself, I literally told myself, I was like, I've really forgiven her, and like I was even challenging myself. I'm like for real though, or you fucking still doing this discipline thing? Yeah. And so I knew like right there in that moment in California, like I was confident that these 2 years of self-development, like I was confident I was going somewhere at this point in time. Like 2 years prior, I'm ready to kill myself. Like at this point, like I don't know where the fuck I'm going, but like we are going somewhere in life. Like I'm like, you're not going to tell me different. And so we're starting over here in California. I was like, fuck it, I'll start over in Tennessee. I was like, I need to face her and see if I've actually forgiven her, which I didn't know what that would turn out to be. My belief was that I forgave her, and so I told myself, I was like, if I can face her, like what would be the emotional reaction to facing her as an adult? And I haven't seen her since being a kid, since running away. And so I did that. I came out here on a Greyhound, and I had nowhere to stay. I showed up to stay at their house, at my dad and my stepmom's house.
So you're still in contact with your dad?
Not really.
How'd you get his address?
Maybe from my brother, my half brother. We were loosely in contact. I wasn't directly in contact with anyone.
Okay.
Loosely in contact, and I think I reached out to my brother, I think. And so I came out here. My dad, which I talked to him before I came out, and he's like, yeah, you can come out, you can stay or whatever. He was pretty just like, yeah, sure, whatever, you need a place to stay, you can stay there. But he didn't know all of what was the whole situation per se. And so I came out there, and when I first had physical contact, but to be in proximity with my stepmother, the first she looked at me, and I mean she looked like she'd seen a ghost, and she said, "You came out here to kill me, didn't you?" It was just me and her. And I told her, I mean, immediately I said, no, I did not. And I told her, I said, I forgave you. And she said, you couldn't forgive me for what I did. And I said, no, I've forgiven you. And at the time, I just told her that, I forgive you. I understand that I didn't go into detail, but I just told her I forgave her and that she was safe and that I hoped the best for her. And I wasn't at their house long because almost like I don't know, maybe a couple months. I get a job at in car sales while we're out here.
Where? What dealership?
It's in Shelbyville. It was a Nissan. They changed ownership since then, but it was back in 2012.
So it's so funny because the last guy had this, John Brown's from Shelbyville.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He was on here last.
Yeah. My dad lives in between Shelbyville and Lewisburg, and so I get a job there, and then so I make a couple dollars, like not much, and so now I am I'm still reading books. Maybe I got like 2 or 3 more under the belt, so like way above genius now. And so now I'm like, dude, I can fuck this up all by myself. I'm gonna start my own company. And so I started a cleaning company with like $500, $1,000 maybe. Like I didn't know nothing about running a company, but I knew how to clean. I knew how to clean. I was like, nobody's gonna question my cleaning. I started a cleaning company, and before long, I moved out from my dad's house, and I started this cleaning company. And honestly, the cleaning company, just because of work ethic and sheer grit, I booked up more work than I could take. However, I wasn't making money. I was hemorrhaging money because I didn't know how to run a company. As soon as I had like these contacts, I was like, oh, I can't do all of it. I need employees. Well, I didn't know how to manage employees. I didn't know how to manage people. I didn't know where to find talent. So now I'm gathering people that'll randomly maybe will show up, maybe won't. I'm overpaying them so that they'll show up. I'm freaked out about them messing something up. So I get workman's comp and insurance, and I'm just friggin' hemorrhaging money. But we have a lot of accounts actually. We're doing churches, gyms. There was a lady, Danny Dubetz and Tim Shaw, who was ALS, used to play at Titans, owned 21 vacation rental lofts in downtown Nashville, and they would turn them by the day and pay us like $150 a unit to clean them, and there might be like 10 units a day to clean. But even with that, I was paying people like per diem to drive up there. I was paying for their parking, the cleaning supplies, so like hemorrhaging fucking money. But we have accounts. And so
because what matters is clients. Like the rest, like money solves everything. So when you don't know how to run a company, as long as you continue to have cash flow come in, the cash flow can pay for consultants, it can pay for you to figure it out, it can pay for leadership courses, it can,
Yep.
So you had the most important thing, which is you had clients.
Yeah, we got the clients. Oh yeah, because word of mouth just blew up. Because dude, nobody was cleaning the way I was cleaning. I mean, they just weren't. And I didn't know how to charge for what I was providing. So I start doing audiobooks while I'm cleaning these toilets and stuff. I'm like, let me throw in an audiobook. So because now I'm like, I've gained something from a couple of these books. So in 2000 I start that company maybe in like 2014, I think it came out in 2013, started the company in 2014. And in 2015, now I've read maybe like 10, 12 books. I don't know. 2015, I set a goal to read 12 books that year. I was like, I'm doing one a month. Gangster. Mic drop. But so I did, I did 25 books that year. And I was like, that's the most we've consumed in a 1-year period. So like my mind is truly being remolded in 2015. And then, so I ended up taking my wife. We pretty much met very shortly after I came out here to Tennessee.
Yeah. So where'd y'all meet?
So we met in a place called Mama's Country, which is like a honky tonk bar. It was my brother's birthday, and so he was like, "Hey, you want to go out and meet here?" And so
your brother had moved down to Tennessee at this point too.
When I say my brother, speaking of my 2 younger brothers or my half brothers, because they grew up in that house the whole time, and so they've since moved out. When I got here, they're actually still living with their mother and my father. So they invite me out there. I go out there, and so we met, we exchanged numbers, and we talked, and I think maybe a couple months later, we went on a date and so on and so forth, and we've been married for maybe I always have to ask her. I think it's been 6 years. I think, but we've been together the whole time, and she's just the most awesome, patient, loving woman.
What does she do?
She works for she's a contract coordinator in real estate. She works for Beezer Homes. So nothing too fancy. But she enjoys it. She's been in that field for a while. So let's see, where were we at with cleaning company? So I take her out on I was incorporating date night once a week because like I was working so much. I realized that like I now realize like I've successfully destroyed a relationship. So I'm like, you gotta water this thing a little bit. So
it's not a fern.
It doesn't just work on its own. So I incorporate these date nights. So and we don't have no money, even though like the money that's coming in is going out as fast as it's coming in. And I mean, like, no, like we're like, to say hand to mouth, like maybe not all the bills are like, we're still like, which bill, like, do we sacrifice this one right now? And this is 2015 time frame. And so we go out on this little date night to TGI Fridays, and baller, watch out now. They also had 2 salt options. One was pepper. And so I told my wife, we get done, and I told my wife, like, the server was bubbly. She did a good job. And I told my wife, I was like, babe, I could probably serve, and just then that'll be our date night money. And then we don't have, because like to do date night was, like it was a decision of what doesn't get paid or what does get paid or what, we didn't
even
just
though
have
you had
money.
clients that were paying you like thousands of dollars.
Literally. Because you figure now again, I didn't know how to run a business. I mean, you figure if there was 10 units a day, I'm making $150 a unit. So let's say it's $1,500. Well, I might have like 8 people out there because I didn't have trained employees. So I might have 6, 7, 8 people out there at $20, $25 an hour just so they'll show up.
So you didn't ever think to hire one person to knock out all 8 of those?
They wouldn't have got it done in time. It was a lot. These were like, I wasn't charging enough from go also. Like nowhere near enough. Like this lady would, like, if the remote, like if the remotes were supposed to be right here after it was clean, like she would have someone go through and like the remote would have to be right there. It wasn't just, did you dust? The place had to be restaged properly for the next client that came in, which I learned so much from this company. I ended up building, I didn't know, but I ended up building these binders for every single room, and it had checklists with every single thing that had to be done and pictures and so on and so forth, so that whoever I put in there could figure it out. They could just go page by page. We're literally like hand to mouth, like literally for sure. And I mean, I'm paying child support. When I during that time when I got out of the Marine Corps, I mean, I had a repossession. I mean, when I came out here to Tennessee, I didn't even have a cell phone. I walked away from a cell phone bill, like straight up. And
so you get excellent credit, is what you're telling me.
Well, no, dude, I just refied my house and I was at like a 770. But in the last 10 years, I mean, I have grinded my balls off.
Yeah, I bet.
I'm so serious. Like, I'm so serious. Like, dude, like, I mean, when I was doing that cleaning company, like when I told my wife I'd start serving, she was like, where does the time even exist?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't care. Like, we're doing it. But I go in there, I literally go in there, and I walked in and I told them, I was like, hey, I'm going to serve for you guys. They're like, who are you? They're like, did you fill out an application? And I was like, no, but I can. But so they gave me an opportunity to serve, and honestly, I didn't serve for like, so at this time I devoured all these books. I'm like, I still don't have direction, but I know I'm doing something.
Yeah.
And,
you can feel it.
Yeah. So I go in there and I start serving, and, now on the grand scheme of things, like not a lot of money, but back then I'm killing it in serving, because like, it was crazy to me. It was mind boggling to me. First and foremost, I brought in the ownership mentality from owning a company. I didn't own Fridays, but I treated it as if I owned it. So like they ate it up, upper level management loved it. I didn't realize what I was doing, but I just thought that like, hey, I have to be all responsible for everything. And then the other thing that like utterly blew my mind, like servers they would be in the back and they'd be like, oh my God, he said he wanted a table and I got him a table. Now he wants a booth. And I was literally baffled, confused. I'm like, get him a booth? I'm like, and I really did. And I would tell these servers because I would tell them like, I know it, like I would be like, I know it's just Fridays for you, but like some of these people like, dude, this is a big fucking meal to them. Just get him a fucking booth, man. Or they'd be like, oh, he asked for ketchup. Now he said he wants mustard. Bring out mustard and fucking mayo.
Yeah.
Like seriously. And so like I served people at that level, and so tips went well. And then
don't you find it, I'm always amazed that I am shocked when I get good service. Like it is so, because it's so rare that like when I get good service or somebody does a good job or somebody has good customer support, I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Like these lights, they're by a company called Aperture. They kind of they do like big production films and like high end as high end gets. And one of these went out. I send an email. It wasn't the easiest process to contact support, but it wasn't bad. And I say, hey, I have a podcast and it's Thursday. This was last week. I have a podcast and it's Thursday. And they go, okay, we'll see what we can do. And then 2 days later, like I receive a package from BH Photo Video.
Awesome.
So not even from them. Like they went to one of their distributors, purchased one, shipped it straight to my house.
That's awesome.
And I was like, oh, this is amazing customer service. Like this is like, that's crazy. And I know how to treat people and I always treat people right. So I talk to people terrible. Like I'm the worst. So with Rabbit, people live chat us all day to ask stupid questions. But one of the most common things is so if you don't know what Rabbit is, it's a little kiosk that runs power bricks with the cords built in. And so people are drunk at a bar, their phone's dying, they rent a fully charged power brick to charge their phone. And to return it, all you have to do is put it back in the kiosk. You don't have to scan anything, you don't have to touch anything. But that's real simple. So people love to click the purchase button and then click confirm purchase and then click, yes, I want to buy this carrot for $40, which means I can't return it after I do this. Yes. So they click 4 steps to purchase it, and then they live chat us and go, hey, I just got charged $40 when I returned it. and so I always write, okay, I refunded you. They're like, can I get a receipt? Or, I'm like, you don't need any of that. I refunded you. Like, I'm just so like I'm going to do like, or I'll say something like, yeah, we don't suck at what we do. Like people will say, hey, this is something that always happens. When's the refund going to happen? I don't know. I clicked it. I don't know how long it takes to get to you. That's your bank. But it's always this thing of like, so people get really mad at me when I run customer support because I just talk to them like really bluntly, which is like, they're like, this lady's like, do I need to dispute this charge? And I'll write, we don't suck at what we do, so I don't know why you would need to do that. Like, I've never lied to you. Or, like, instead of answer, like, I just always am like, no, idiot.
Yeah.
But anyway, all that to say, like, it's so shocking that, like, I get better customer service at Chick-fil-A than I get at pretty much every mid-level restaurant thing. Like, I went to, Solpe, like, this dude.
Yeah.
He just opened his new steakhouse in Dallas.
Okay.
So I went there for my birthday.
How was it? Yeah.
Incredible. Met him, which is like a dream.
Yeah.
And of course he he cut the steak and then he put a piece in my mouth. So in this photo, my cheeks are like this big. So it's like me and Salt Bay. I look like
That's like, great. Yeah.
And I forgot, he wears shades, and I always wear, when I go to nice restaurants, I wear like rose gold glasses and a cowboy hat. And I didn't have that on me. I forgot the glasses and the cowboy hat. I was like, dang it.
Yeah.
I look cool in this photo. But it was, it was incredible, but it's also like I spent $500. Of course, it's going to be incredible.
Right.
My wife spent $500 as my birthday dinner. We spent $500. But anyway, yeah, it's amazing to me how bad, because the thing is like I don't tip on percentages. I tip on how good somebody does.
Yeah.
So somebody does a good job, I leave like a $30 tip on a $20 meal. Because it's like I respect, like, hey, if you treat me well, I'll treat you well. Like that's my whole MO is like, if you can do things right, I'll pay for it.
Right.
Anyway, continue. That was a rant.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely no. And I experienced that. And I couldn't believe the lack of service but the lack of understanding from the servers. But so nonetheless, do the serving thing, and I'm not serving, but for a couple months, and then they asked me if I want to do a management position. So I'm like, I'm down. And so they're like, well, we'll start you as a like whatever they call it, but where they'll pay you by the hour. So like, like an assistant manager type thing.
So you probably don't express this, but you internally know it, which is that like winners win.
Yeah.
Like you realize like, oh, cool. If I work harder than everybody, because I live in the United States of America, I'll do better than everyone.
Right. Yeah. Well, and when they offered me that they said, well, they asked me would I do management. I said, yeah, I'll do it. And they said, we'll want to start you in this assistant position because you have no management experience. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. And they're like, so we'll pay you hourly. So how much do you want to make an hour? And I was like, well, I figured out like in tips, I figured I was making like at least like on the worst day, $20 an hour. So I was like, I'll do it for $25 an hour. And they're like, oh no, we'll pay you $15 an hour. And I'm like, no way. I'm like, I'm making more than that serving. You're crazy. So like I was like, oh, pass. I was like, you guys are crazy. Like that would never work. And so like I served for like another month, and then they were like, well, they're like, you know, that $15 an hour is a little negotiable. I was like, okay, 22. And they're like, we were thinking 17. I was like, no way. So long story short, they're like, well, take this, this aptitude test. They're like, and we'll see how you score, and then maybe we'll just put you in salary. And so I took the aptitude test, and they're like, okay, you scored pretty good. Like, how much do you want? And so I didn't know even how to ask for a salary. I asked for $50,000, and they seemed pretty happy to pay it. So I went in. So now I have this cleaning company. I've been serving for like a few months.
You asked for 50,000 because that's the most you'd ever made.
Correct.
Like,
Correct.
Yeah, that was that own limit in your head.
100%.
Like, well,
100%.
I've never made more than 50, so
let's do 50
now.
So absolutely. So they're like, cool, we'll pay you 50. And so now now they own my schedule. So I was like, oh fudge. So we actually ended up.
Is that the word you used? You're like, oh fudge.
Yeah, fudge.
Like fudge this.
It's corporate America. So I ended up. I kept cleaning accounts, but I start telling people pretty much like people, because I was cleaning some houses too. And so I pretty much started shutting down some of the accounts. And then I sold the account in Nashville to one of the guys that was actually working for me. And then I had 2 churches left, and I was paying some kid in college to go clean them, and I was just invoicing it and just making like a tiny little bit of money. But at this time, $50K on a salary, not on a commission base, like this is the first time like we start gaining traction now. Now we can manage our funds. So I was a service manager. I did that for like 6 months, and like I knew it was fun, but I was like, 50 grand just also doesn't cut the cheese. I'm like, so what's next? And so I went and did all my studying, test out and everything to be a kitchen manager. And they, like in 6 months, they offered me to go be the kitchen manager of TGI Friday Opry Mills, which is a very high volume store.
And the worst location.
Oh, it's horrible. Horrible location. But mind you, I live in Chapel Hill, so it's almost like an hour and a half drive one way. But when they make the offer, I'm like, I'm your guy. Like, no one is better than me for this. Now, I don't want to be a kitchen manager. I don't want to work there, but I know that this is the next stepping stone. So I take it. I'm driving like 3 hours a day to do this. So like I'm barely getting sleep. I'm still like books, like every day, an hour and a half books, nonstop books. And
you're like Ty Lopez.
yeah, with the books, yeah.
Here in my garage.
So I did that for so no cleaning company at this time. Just
by the way, I do
that.
the same thing. I mean, I do audible books. That's how I'm able to do 100 a year.
Yeah,
exact same.
Start
page.
reading them, and then get them put them at that 1.5 speed.
Yeah. I'm a 1.2 because it bothers me, or 1.1. It bothers me if their voice is different.
Yeah.
And so at 1.5, their voice is higher pitch and
big time. Yeah.
It drives me crazy.
So I am most comfortable at 1.25, but I dabble in 1.5. But most comfortable 1.25.
Do you know Eduardo? One of Alex's friends, realtor. I don't know how to say his last name.
Oh, Aguirre?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at you. Look at you. He's been my client for 8 years. We did his logo,
That's funny.
Yeah, he's been a client for 10 years, maybe probably 8 years. Anyway, he does it like 2x.
Yeah, that's intense.
Or 2.5x.
That's funny.
Like,
yeah.
I'm like, there's no way you're learning any of this.
You're grasping it. Yeah. I'm not sure. That's funny because me and him actually spoke just the other day just about that very thing. He said he did it. He said he was doing it at that speed on books that he had already read. Which so he's kind of like recapping them, but I don't. Maybe he might be doing on new books too. But well,
this was 2 years ago, so I was probably just got it wrong.
Yeah, who knows? But yeah, so kitchen manager there, no at this, so and also let's talk about the relation. This is when with the kids, with my son. So somewhere around this time, I'm getting to go visit them. I mean, I'm working crazy hours.
And where do they live at this point?
So when she left California, she goes to Pennsylvania. Then they go down to North Carolina.
Okay.
Okay. So at this time, I'm like extremely busy. A couple times I try to reach out and to establish a relationship again with the kids, and I just don't like the way she treats me. So I'm like, fuck that. I'm not being treated that way. And so I keep my nose to the grindstone.
How is your wife taking this? You working all the time? Is there a resentment build? How does this go?
My wife has been absurdly supportive of me the whole entire time. Absurdly. I mean, that's what I have to say. I mean, absurdly supportive. My wife's a little bit older than I am, by the way, too. I don't know if she'd be happy. My wife's, so I'll be turning 36. My wife's going to turn 50 in May.
Okay.
And she's been extremely supportive of me the whole entire time. And she's watched me grow every single year I've known that woman. Like, I've never been in the same place mentally, emotionally, socially, physically the next year, ever. And I promise her every year, I tell her, I mean, I told her it was probably like just a couple months ago, the first time I looked at her, and I told her, we were in the bedroom, and I was like, babe, and she looked at me and she was like, what? And I said, I want to make 7 figures. And she said, I know you will. But that was the first time I actually said it out loud. But she believes in me. She supports me. She's patient. She definitely gets frustrated sometimes, but she's very patient, and I do my best that when she is frustrated, I do my best to just pause for a second, because I know that I'm well overdriven. So if she's frustrated, it's probably sound to just take a step back and allow her to be frustrated. And I do my best to allow those at that time. But yeah, I mean, through that, I mean, we have a great relationship. She's supported the household. We have a child together, a 6-year-old. He'll turn 6 in April, with my wife. And she's, I mean, there was days where I would sleep.
So there's 3 kids in the house.
4.
Oh.
She has I have a stepdaughter that's 19. She'll turn 20 this year. I met Macy when she was, I think, just turning 11. So yeah, me and my wife, however long, whatever that math is, 11. So about maybe 10. So about 9 years more.
Did you meet all her high school boyfriends?
Yeah, I did.
Were they fucking terrified of you?
I hope so.
I got scared when you spoke into the mic and your voice was so deep. I was like, oh man. Let me create some space. Because this dude leaps across the table for no reason because he got PTSD.
That's great.
Drinking his hustle juice.
But yeah, so my wife's been just supportive beyond what was. I literally actually told my wife, it was just recently, maybe a day or so ago. I was like, man, babe, I was like, I asked her, I was like, could I shoot? Because my wife's not my wife's I think it's fair to say my wife's an introvert, but she's not like
Hermit.
She's very she's not hermit. But I think, very introvert. But I told her, I was like, babe, I asked her, I was like, would you, if I shot a video of you, I asked her if she would, and I said, people don't, talking about like when I was a kitchen manager, one night I was driving home, and like I was like beyond driven. And one night I was driving home, it was a Ford Fusion, and I took that thing into the side, I fell asleep, took a thing on the side of the road, like pow. I wake up, the car's out of control. I get back control of the car, and I'm still driving. And I look around, there's no cars. And I drove that bitch home. I went to sleep, and I got up before the sun rose, and I went back to work. And like a couple days later, my wife's like, what happened to the car? I was like, oh yeah, I ran it inside the road. Like I was not about to fucking slow down. Like I was not about to slow down. Like I told my wife, I was like, you, like, people won't believe me when I tell my story.
Was she scared of you? I mean, like, that's a intense question. I mean, because I feel like my wife would be terrified if I fell asleep. Like, she's terrified of me just driving. But if I fell asleep at the wheel, which actually I have when we were driving, kind of, and that scared her. And so, like, she, like, has a rule where, like, she just starts implementing rules around, like, driving at that point. Is your wife too scared to do that? Or just,
maybe,
like, knows that you're too driven and it's going to make you want to do it more if she says something?
And maybe even scared. Like, obviously not, when I say obviously, I only hit her a little bit, and no, but no, maybe scared in the sense that like since me and my wife have met, like literally, like I said, every year is advanced. Like I've blocked out like certain things just aren't an option. Certain failures just are not, like, and I mean like not at all, like not a little bit. And so I don't think my wife has ever experienced that with a human that close before. And so at some level, I'm speaking for her, I don't know, but at some level there probably is a little bit of like, how do we even handle this guy? I mean, I assume, but nonetheless, but I was telling my wife, I was like, there was a period of time where like, I really was like, no matter what, like whatever it takes, like I'm getting out of this rut and I'm going to a new place. And that's what I was talking to my wife about. I was like, would you talk about it on video? Because like, I don't, of course everyone thinks that they've been through a lot, but like maybe if they heard it from you, like I would never, I honestly, like, I want to help so many people. I'm very, very passionate about looping back for those one chapter behind, but I would never encourage anyone to do it the way I did it.
Yeah.
I would never encourage anyone to do it the way I did it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Yeah. But
okay, so you're at TGA Fridays as at
kitchen
Opry
manager,
Mills,
yep.
which is just the worst location.
Yep. Employees are rough. I mean, they're shooting up heroin in the bathroom, And I just every day, like, you couldn't
like,
tell
I'm
me.
a crack kind of guy,
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah, not injecting it, So, but every day I would go to work every friggin' day, like every day I would go in pumped up and pump these kids up. Like every day, I'm like, we're doing this. Like, this is the best day of our lives today, right now. Like, they literally like in the beginning it was like, is he crazy? But later on they're like, he's just crazy. Like, get pumped up around him when he comes. Like, I brought the energy every friggin' day. And so I did that for about a year and a half. And at that point in time,
I feel like that's so easy to do when you're rich. But I feel like that's real tough making 60. Were you making 50 still then?
So I think I was at 65 plus bonuses, but still hard. Still like the work does not equate for what's being paid.
Yeah. Have you ever thought you were making a shit ton of money and then you did how many hours you worked? And you're like, I was making $10 an hour. Yeah. I just work 18-hour days.
Yeah. Yep. And it's funny because even on top of like everything, like I would do things like at the end of the night, if I closed, like I would polish the dish rack and the dish machine, like all the metal. Like, I mean, this place would be immaculate when I would leave and close. And I remember one time there was a manager that asked me, she said, why do you do that every day? She said, nobody gives a fuck. Nobody else is doing it. And like, nobody gives a fuck. And what I told her, and I didn't even like, I did understand it then, but it wasn't even real at the time, but I was like, I'm going to fucking make it real. But I told her, I said, look, if I got two, I didn't use this exact example, but I did use the example of like ammunition. Like if I had two guns and I'm always shooting both of them, then I only ever need to shift. I don't ever have to figure out where to recruit new energy.
Yeah.
And so she didn't quite get that, but nonetheless. So a year and a half goes by.
Yeah, kitchen manager. Right. She's like, all right, he's crazy. You're like at home, like, babe, I just gave the most amazing analogy. So check this out, two guns. And she's at home like, yeah, I work with this fucking crazy dude. He polishes the dish rock, and then he gives me some gun analogy. He's probably going to shoot up the whole building.
He's going to shoot the place.
Because he's white.
Oh, man, that's great. So the guy that hired me on in TGI Fridays, he had switched companies to Buffalo Wild Wings. And so he reaches out to me and he's like, hey, do you want to come be my AGM or my assistant general manager?
Like, I know you are doing well right now, but you need to go take over Cool Springs, Buffalo Wild Wings. That place is run. That place is the worst run. I want to post this and tag them. That place is filthy and awful every time. Have you been to that one?
I honestly, I don't think I've ever eaten there. I know where it is, of course, but
okay, sorry. Continue.
So, well, and very close by, the Spring Hill location was the one that that this general manager, he was the general manager of Spring Hill location.
And they're franchises, right? They're not all corporate owned.
No, they're. I mean, I'm sure there's franchises, but I believe Cool Springs and I know Spring Hill is corporate.
Okay.
And then they got bought out recently by what's the name of that company? I forget, but the name they bought Arby's, they bought Sonic.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they got a huge portfolio.
The people that own KFC.
I think KFC.
Yeah.
I think they're still under Starbucks and McDonald's, but they're like the third hugest portfolio out there now.
I only asked that because a lot of my big opportunities in life have come from people that own franchises, and were like, oh, well, I own this and this and this, and so I helped their one business, and then I helped their other businesses, and so I was like curious if you knew the franchise owner or how that worked. But anyway, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So I go out to Spring Hill to be his assistant general manager. Pay doesn't change by too much, maybe just a little bit more money, but we went from an hour and a half drive to a 20-minute drive. And I know assistant general manager is the next up on the totem pole. So I show up at that store and bring all the energy that I have.
First day, cleaning,
dude,
polishing everything.
Hey, no, so and I bring the energy in that mother trucker, and I told the other so he was actually just standing up a new management team, so like the rest of the managers all kind of form under him. And I told him, I was like, I am going to be the next general manager, and I'm going to do it in the next 6 months. And I said, they were like, well, what about, they were asking like the guy that brought me over there, Buck. They were like, well, what about Buck? Like, if he's the general manager, how you going to? I said, I'm going to get him fucking promoted. I'm going to get him out of the way. We're going to get him promoted.
This is just straight. It's Extreme Ownership by Jocko, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I read that book during that time frame as well. And so I literally I did anything I could to make that store shine, and oh yeah, he did it. He's so awesome. But like 3 months in, like 90 days in, he takes a job to go move to Love's, the company Love's. And so then the general manager spot's open. And, so they interview me, and I'm like, I'm the guy, like no one else is the guy. Like I will fucking run the store, like better than anyone's ran the store, blah, blah, blah. So they gave me a chance. And so in about a year, I took all the metrics in that store and did we did great things with the metrics. I mean, outstanding things. But you figure a little bit of discipline. And by this time, I've digested like so many books. So now I'm understanding like not just sales, but leadership. Yeah. Like people are buying in. People are excited to do this stuff. So like now when like the head shed comes in, like the numbers look good and the people are happy. So they asked me to take over the Clarksville location, which is the highest volume store in the state. And so I said, yeah, and I actually was transferring up there. Now, mind you, I missed a step. Back when I go to that Joe Verdi seminar back in 2011-12 timeframe, so I'm starting to eat up these books, and someone invited me to a free, remember I didn't know how sales worked, a free Robert Kiyosaki seminar.
Oh, yeah, that one's free.
I found out it wasn't free.
It's kind of like the... who's the worst shark? What's his name? The guy that had the Walmart brand, Fubu, that guy, Damon John, is that his name?
Oh, I know who you're talking about, Damon. Is John his last name? I don't think John's last name.
The Fubu guy? He's on Shark Tank?
But it is Damon, though.
I don't know which one is Fubu. It is Damon, but I can't think of the last.
All right, so anyway, Damon, his whole thing is he licenses everything, and like his whole name, his whole brand, everything. So like right now in the U.S., there's 20... Damon from Shark Tank's, live trainings and or before COVID, I guess. But he's got like all these events, and all it is they license his name. They say it's his material or whatever, but he's never there.
That's funny.
Okay, sorry.
So it sounds like the Robert Kiyosaki seminar I went to. Yeah. But when I went to that seminar, of course they were trying to sell us on some other shit, but I looked around. So at this time in my life, I didn't even know how to quantify success. I didn't fathom that. I really did not believe in any way, I didn't even have an imagery of what success would look like because I didn't think that I could ever achieve it. So I didn't even know, I didn't even have a picture of what success was. I go to the seminar, I see these people fucking happy as shit, high-fiving, they're wearing suits, their shoes look nice. I'm like, bam, there's success. So I ask around, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Real estate. Got to do real estate. And then I find out how much it costs to do real estate. So let me pause that because that's where the seed comes from. So general manager, Spring Hill, offered me to go to Clarksville.
What do you think is GM?
So I think I left at $85K plus bonuses. So maybe just around six figures when we're said and done. And so Clarksville, and so I'm going up to Clarksville. Now, the whole time I'm in the restaurant industry, I keep telling, after we had sold off the cleaning company stuff and shut that down, I keep telling my wife, I'm about to quit and I'm about to go in real estate. The whole time, while I'm up at Opry Mills, and the whole time we're just sitting back. I mean, I'm talking about paying everything, working on the credit. I mean, dude, I'm buying, I own a few suits. But when I'm in the restaurant industry, I'm buying
more than one.
But I'm buying these while I'm in the restaurant industry. And I have no use for a suit. I'd look weird if I wore a suit, but I'm putting them in the closet. I'm buying these books. I'm saving money. And so this whole time, I'm going to quit. And every time when I'm about to, I go to take that leap and I'm what if it doesn't work? I need more money, whatever the case may be. And so, go to take over this Clarksville location, and
just run my maple table while you're here. Thank you.
Oh, man, that's horrible. So the district manager, the gentleman that would have been ahead of me, honestly, as soon as I go up there at Clarksville location, we weren't vibing. I didn't like the way he spoke to me, and And so I was like, fuck it, I'm done. I'm going to do real estate. I was like, I'm not going to be treated that way. Like I work really fucking hard. I'm not going to be treated that way. So I told them and I resigned and I was like, I'm ready. I'm going to fucking do it, man. I had a little nest egg saved up, a little one, but I had it. Credit squared away, like life's on fucking track. Like we're understanding fucking mentality, leadership, sales. I'm like, I'm doing this shit, man. If you're thinking about doing real estate, don't quit before you get your license. So I straight up like left Buffalo Wild Wings. I had no real estate license.
Okay.
So I go get my real estate license in like 28 days, like record time.
Yep.
And
because the course is typically 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. But you probably did the course where you do like full time.
Yep,
and so you can do it in a week.
Yeah.
And then you had 2 weeks to study for the exam.
And then, and then there's the post licensing stuff that needed to be done. But yeah, we did it in like 1 month, and I'm like ready to go. And then I launched, and now ultimately, so I went 6 months without earning a commission, and I had no job. 6 months, and like everything that I saved, I watched it dwindle down to the wire to almost zero. And the whole time, I'm like holding out faith, like. It literally did start to mentally weigh on me. But obviously that had an effect, or we wouldn't have probably went that whole 6 months. But I'm still holding out faith. I'm like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Like, no matter, like, even on my worst day, I'm like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to do this. And so, I won't say that first brokerage I was with, but I was with a brokerage at first. And so 6 months went, maybe ultimately, it's on everyone, any business venture, anything you do, it is ultimately on you. But I did need a little bit of leadership that probably wasn't there in that brokerage. So I switched brokerages, and so we went 6 months. We made no money, and then like in the next 90 days, I did like $3 million in volume. I probably made close to 6 figures the next 3, and I was like, oh my God. And then I've only been in real estate for not quite 2 years yet. And last year I did a little bit over $8 million in volume. Last year was my first year of production in real estate, really, and did a little bit over $8 million in volume. And honestly, like my whole thing in as far as like I don't know nothing about real estate, but I genuinely challenge myself, and like it's not like everyone can say it and so on, but we act in a manner in which we think other people may want to perceive us, and I get as close as I can every day to being raw as fuck with everybody. Yeah. And then people, you put out your vibe and your tribe will show up. And so I mean, honestly, I've had great success with real estate, and that originally my goal in launching real estate was not to make money. I figured there's probably money to be made in there, but I didn't know how that was going to work or not. But my goal was really to expand my network. And in the last year and a half, my network has just expanded crazy. And ultimately, my biggest passion is really around, like I said, just looping back for those that are one chapter behind and creating that light for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I moved here. Grow my network. Like it's everything. I don't know how to build a studio apparently because my mic is just doing this. Sorry to distract you. I just hold it. Like this.
Yeah.
I knew I shouldn't have touched it. It's like perfect. I'm like, no. So okay.
Boom. There it is.
Sorts. Take me. So you're kind of new to real estate. You've had some success. Mm-hmm. What is next in real estate? Is it building a team? Is it your own brokerage? Is it real estate investing and getting away kind of from just like being an agent? Like what is the next move?
Inevitably, I believe I will. So real estate investing absolutely will take place. Not an option. And
mind focus and everything.
Real estate investing is inevitable. Most likely, I mean, I want to go I will go eventually in the direction of buy and hold, and I want to buy things like apartment complexes, not just houses. So obviously that'll take a little bit of time. But with that being said, like my goal is not to invest money in houses right now, because that's money that can be leveraged to make larger amounts in order to get to those apartment complexes. Outside of investing in that nature, which, we're still talking about 5 years down the road or so, a brokerage, inevitably I'll open up a brokerage. And the reason I say inevitably, because I'm most passionate about leading, empowering, and helping others. And the brokerage is going to allow me to lead, empower, and help others build a lifestyle that they never even dreamed of having. So that brokerage is, like when I say inevitably, that'll happen, but it's really just because it's a portal for me to be able to pour into other human beings. Outside of real estate, I'm working on establishing, doing personal coaching for people, and then keynote speaking and motivational speaking. I don't even know I continue to document my journey and be on my journey and move the ball forward. And I don't even know how it'll all come to fruition and what it'll all look like when it looks like it. But it's just raw passion that I know that there was a time when I couldn't even visualize what success looked like. And I know there's still humans there. And I'm like, man, with my last breath, I'm going to speak it into you if I can.
It's interesting. So do you have a team now, or is it just you?
I do have a team. So I have an assistant and a transaction coordinator. The assistant pretty much does anything I need. And then my transaction coordinator does all of the paperwork.
What are you on pace to do this year, or what have you done in quarter one?
That's a good question. I've closed. I didn't track the money. I think I've closed 9 transactions. I think I did 23 total last year. But I haven't.
So you're already on pace to 3 ETs.
Yeah.
4 ETs.
Yeah. So real estate, ultimately, I'm not as concerned with growing the business in real estate as I am with making sure that my business in real estate is it's pretty much fully referral based. And in that manner, it's important to me that I take care of anyone that thought of me as a referral. And then as far as growth goes, like inevitably there will be transactions, new relationships, and money made in real estate. And to be fair, like when I first set my goal for real estate, I did set a goal this year for real estate, and it was to do $500,000, for me to produce $500,000 gross. I figured that would net me at $350 after taxes, and I figured another $100,000 for cost of sales, which would net me around $250. And to be fair, that was in the beginning of the year. We weren't quite we weren't having the inventory issues we're having now. So realigning, maybe we'll hit that goal in real estate, maybe not. I still plan on hitting that amount of money by the end of the year from some fashion or another. Yeah.
What does the ideal team look like? Are you national? Are you just local?
As far as real estate?
Yeah.
I think I would. I think I would keep it local. I think. Once you have a brokerage, then we can start. Maybe choose a franchise or so on and so forth. But as far as just a real estate team, definitely want to specialize in some form of local, just so we can have. If everything's important, nothing's important. So kind of like getting what's our things that are important, what's our things that we're going to hit every single time, and hey, if we miss on these, that's not our claim to even touch those.
Have you thought about leveraging your skills of leadership to start other businesses in the space? So, for example, you had a cleaning company before. Have you thought about having one again?
Yeah. No, I have thought about cleaning company, or even. I thought about possibly, I don't do construction, but I thought about the acumen that I now possess and the people that I know, maybe starting a construction company and so forth.
Well, something people don't think, a lot of people don't think big. So when people have an inventory issue, well, if you own the land, you build your own homes and you supply your own inventory. There's this model. This is what JWB Real Estate Capital does out of Jacksonville. Is they do everything. So they own the land, they build the home, they sell the home to the investor, and then they do the property management of it.
Yeah.
And so you're a smart guy who's good at leadership, and I'm like, man, you should have. Not only should you, let's say you're selling 50, 100 homes a year, you should also be cleaning those 100 homes a year. Like I just look at every deal as like, how do you make those deals reoccurring.
Yeah,
And I think it's through additional services. And I think you now have you have everything it takes to build other companies in the space.
Right.
I mean, I'm not here to coach you and lead you through
Yeah,
this.
no.
I just was thinking about this, man, you have everything it takes.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. That's definitely a lot of. Right now, I think my biggest. Well, I don't think. I'm very certain. Everything you said made the wheels turn in my mind. As far as energy goes, I definitely put my energy right now into building out how I will do motivational speaking and coaching. Just because it's such an infant, and we're gaining traction on it all the time. So it's still fun to push forward on.
So I'm gonna throw to what I think is gonna be your biggest problem. And I even told you this in an email. Full disclosure, we're working together a little bit on this. The people you want to help can't afford what you need to charge.
Yeah.
How do you fix this?
Yeah, I was talking to a guy actually just, I think it was yesterday morning, and I'll be doing an event with, it was a guy that coached me in real estate early on, and I'll be doing an event with him. And we talked about that, and I don't know the finite answer, but one thing that he brought up was corporate sponsorships. If people can't afford what you have, but they need it.
Do exactly what the guy did to you. Hey, your dealership's going to pay for it.
Yeah. Well, essentially, if you need what I have, but you can't pay for it, and I can provide it for you for free, now it's on you to show up, right? So now we can get butts in the seat. And most corporations that have a message to pass, the hardest thing for them is getting butts in the seat. So maybe in that manner, but at the end of the day, I just have to figure it out.
Yeah. What's your end goal in 2 years? What do you want to make from speaking? Just from speaking 2 years from now. So March of 2023.
It's a very fair question. And at the end of the day, I have to identify that, and I have to give something so I have a measuring stick.
Or how many people do you want to have spoken to?
Fair enough. That. Because right now, I don't have nothing grand, but if I had $1 million sitting in my bank account, I wouldn't go out and buy anything for myself right now. Not a car, not another piece of clothing. What I'm wearing right now today is what I wear doing $500,000 real estate deals. So while I absolutely need more money to be able to reach more people, I normally don't look at it in terms of money. And so in how many people in terms of reach, I would love to be, I don't even know how to properly project what the growth will be, but what would I just want?
You can in public speaking, because the way you look at it is one conference with 40,000 people and then 50 conferences with 100, your numbers are just so it's really hard to project it. So it's really
I would love to be doing it full time, nonstop. Yeah. In 2023, traveling on the road, 20 days a month, would not
bringing your family.
I don't know that I would want to. If they wanted to come, then all day. But I don't know that they would want that stress.
You don't think your kids would want to come watch Dad speak, and then
actually, yeah. Well, the kids would love it. Yeah,
because it's kind of right now. I'm in building business phase, and I hope I eventually go from building businesses, and I'm kind of in this phase now, to buying businesses, and then eventually full-time venture capitalist kind of person.
Yep.
And so in that, I just want to fly around in a jet with my whole family, look at deals, do our thing, public speak when I have to, meet with board meetings, everything else. But I want my family as a unit with me.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And so when you say that, I'm immense power, you provoke thought, because first I was no, and you're what about your kids? I was oh yeah, my kids. And honestly, I respect you for saying it, and I always have to. Those are things that I have to go back and remind myself on, because I didn't have that example of oh, we go do it as a family, or we go do it as a team. But no, there's huge value in that.
So has your stepmom died of cancer yet, or
no? She's still alive.
That's amazing. Because you look at Kim Kardashian's father, like the OJ case, and then he dies of cancer. Mm-hmm. And you look at a lot of cult leaders, yes. They die horrible deaths of natural. It's I'm not. I think God is just. And so when I hear that somebody like her is still alive, I'm man.
Yeah, definitely still thriving, I suppose.
Yeah, how do you go about telling your kids about this? I'm gonna. How do you go about telling your kids about this? Having this conversation about your abusive.
So my 6-year-old, he wouldn't even comprehend yet. and my 10-year-old and my 14-year-old. So this speaking thing, and like, I mean, I actually shared it with you earlier. When we first connected not long ago, I had never even spoke live, and just in the last week, I've spoke live 3 times. And the very first time that I spoke live was just, say, like a week ago, and I brought my kids there, and they heard me tell my story. And they asked me questions afterwards, and I shared with them anything I could, but they heard me tell the whole story.
What do people leave your message feeling? Do they leave feeling heavy-hearted? Do they leave feeling motivated? Or do you kind of take them to this range of emotions because that's your story?
So I think what I've realized, and so that to that question, I'm just realizing, and because of the reaction I'm getting, I'm also learning how to tailor my story more of value. But I think the biggest thing that I get right now is people, and honestly, I'm so glad to be able to do it, is validation in their situation and an example of courage. So, like, how embarrassing is it to say a lot of the things that I say? I mean, I've eaten feces, and to stand up on a stage and to say that, and to be a fully able-bodied white American male, I should be privileged, right? But to hear that and to be vulnerable enough to say that, I mean, when I get done speaking these last couple of times, I mean, people just come up to me and they're like, oh my God, I've been through the same thing. I couldn't even imagine being up there and sharing it at that level. Yeah. And so I think it's hope for them to validate that their situation was fucking real, because, so when we have childhood trauma and we become adult, everyone's like, get over it. We all went through some shit. So first of all, validating that the shit's fucking real. And then that you shouldn't be embarrassed about it. Those things when you're a child, like today, no longer should things happen to you. They should happen because of you. But when you were a child, that shit happened to you.
Yeah. And I think it's super powerful to be it's okay to be a terrible human being. It's okay that your story involves like mess. Because that's like everyone's story.
Right.
We've all done things we're not proud of.
Right.
We've all done things that are really embarrassing. Yeah. And so it's, I think that we often get stuck in our head to think, man, I'm the only person who's ever done something this awful.
Right. Right.
I'm the only person who's ever done, it's like poor old me, and it's like, validating people's feelings. How long did that take you to learn? Because I'm still learning that.
I'm not, so how long? I'm not sure, but, so I got, I'll talk a little bit about that. So I served on my 3rd deployment, a guy, Luke Yepsen got shot and killed by a sniper, and, his vehicle commander, Richard Casper, he died, Luke died right next to him. And so when Richard came back, he struggled with killing himself, and because he was Luke's leader and so forth. And so through it all, he ended up writing a song about it, and then creating a nonprofit that veterans actually fly in from all over the country and to go to the Grand Ole Opry and write a song. I say all that to say, I bump into Casper. That's his last name, Casper. I bump into Casper a year and a half ago, roughly, right after I'd started real estate, and we didn't. I didn't know he didn't know. We lived next to each other and didn't even know. And so he's like, yeah, dude. He's like, I got this nonprofit and so on. He's like, you should do it. It's really helpful to healing PTSD. And that's where I shared with him. I said, that I actually have way more, I'd be happy to do the program and I'd love to do some more healing, but I have way more PTSD from my childhood, and that's what I would be talking about before I'd ever be talking about war. And he's like, no, it's okay, cool. And I went and I made a song, and in this song, it talks about, so I talk about my childhood and what happened. And in the end of the song, the songwriter, he's like, it ends by saying, I want to ask my dad what the hell he was thinking, why he didn't just take us a run, and why he still sleeps with the woman who killed his son. And that's how the song ends. And when the songwriter first says this line, everyone in the room was like, no, we can't actually put that in there. And then the songwriter was like, well, it's his song. And they were like, everyone looked at me and they're like, do we want to put it in there? And I was like, I need to think about this, because it was really heavy. And so everyone left the room, and I took a minute, and they came back, and I was like, put it in the song. It's what happened. And we put it in the song, and honestly, it was like one of the more liberating things. Like, I have a say now, because my older brother also tried to, somewhere along the lines, he tried to tell that this happened after he had ran away, and he was made to be like, oh, he's crazy, he's trying to start stuff, and so this lie has lived, and so this is the first time it was like, I get a say. It happened. It goes in the song, and that was extremely liberating. And so after that, over the last year and a half, I've actually went back, and that's where I now mentor veterans that are coming through with PTSD. And through my experience and through dealing with those veterans, I really realized, like, one of the most important parts, like, you got to get over your shit. But before you can get over it, we got to fucking identify that there's shit sitting there. Yeah. And so that was really the awakening moment of validating people's feelings, emotions, and what they've been through. Like, before we can do anything, we can't get over something that doesn't exist. We got to validate it first. And that was a real awakening for me.
I had a question. I forgot it, so I'll edit this out. No. And there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on before we end. I guess, like, what happens with your stepmom? Like, is there any way to ever prosecute her? I mean, I know it's past statute of limitations. Like, is there any way to launch an investigation? Like,
I have no clue. I have no desire to waste any energy on it.
Yeah.
None.
Well, I know somebody on Reddit does, so that's why I'm asking.
That's funny.
If you've ever, like, my wife does, okay? Maybe you don't, but many people on the internet do. True crime is just huge.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I look at it honestly, because people have obviously that kind of comes up, and I really, first and foremost, I believe in part of my journey of forgiveness. I don't have any interest of any form of retaliation, but the other piece is, I believe very, very firmly in the fact that, I don't know that anyone will argue on what you focus on will grow.
Yeah.
So if you woke up every day if you quantified the amount of energy that you had to use every day, and let's say it was 10 units of energy, and you put them somewhere at the end of the day, if we viewed all those are the things that are going to grow. And I really, like Winston Churchill said, you'll never make it your destination if you stop to throw stones at every barking dog. Yeah. Like, I do not have time to throw stones at barking dogs. Like, I got somewhere to be.
Yeah, it's true. All right. Do you want to go eat some brisket?
I'm ready.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on.
Dude, I appreciate being